How many people in here are in private practice? Okay. And how many people in here run your own business or you're in a big firm? All right. So we get a cross section. There's some people in here probably who are inactive, or some people who just want to remain active, or some people that may not even be actively practicing. I got that. I get that wherever I go. But I am telling you, what I'm about to tell you touches each one of you in a way that when you leave here, you're going to know something you didn't know. Now, there's levels of incompetence that I have identified. The first one is not knowing what you don't know, okay? So we are bombarded with so much information. There's good information now hidden in plain sight that I'm suggesting that there's a lot of information that you don't even know you don't know. We're going to take you beyond that, and you're going to know you don't know something. And hopefully we're going to take you to where you know something partially. And if you want to, you can know it thoroughly and instinctively. And we're asking you to at least join us emotionally, if not anywhere else. So there's no concept that touches every phase of human existence in my 69 years that I've been alive. I'm so old Abraham Lincoln takes off on my birthday, okay? In my years of being alive and my 2 careers, okay, I have never seen anything with such an impact, good, very bad, and I can suggest to you that we have a way to make it good, as substance abuse, okay? So Mike can tell you, Mike Zunder, he's a very famous trial attorney wherever he goes. He knows a lot of cases have this connected to it somehow. We have 25%, 5% of the people who live on the planet Earth, 5% of them live in America. 25% of the people who inhabit the planet Earth and are in prison live in America. That's a pretty startling number, okay? 94% of females incarcerated in Pennsylvania are there for substance-related issues. And I think Mike probably could go all the way back to his memory when he may have first met me years ago. And I think I was telling you, I have a thing where I'm going to get the judge not to put the guy in jail. And he's kind of skeptical, you know. And you know where I was. And you know who the prosecutor was at that time. And, but I happened to be in front of the right judge who was willing to listen to something outside the box. And it began something that here I am all these years later. He's probably thinking, God, I can't believe you're still messing around with that. And we are. But it keeps getting better and better and better and better. Okay? So, having said that, okay, I'm going to give you a bunch of like little ornaments. Like imagine we're going to put a Christmas tree together here. And I just brought the ornaments down and dropped them on they're all laying here. And where they go is what I'm going to do over the next series of minutes so that we can get something out of this right now. So for now, you're going to see disconnected thoughts, like what I just told you about what we're doing. And they're going to be floating out here, and we're going to connect them. Okay? So some of you are private business people. All of you are licensed attorneys who passed the bar. Okay? And all of you went to law school. Now, I always like to tell people that I did it at age 32. I started. I graduated and started doing this at age 36. As somebody who wasn't one of you, as somebody who went to a different profession in the educational profession, I have always been amazed at how you generally, not you in particular, tend to walk around with your head down and your chin down, and you're discouraged, and you say, wow, I can't believe. I had a friend once tell me, I introduced him to my son, who's my partner, and he said, I can't believe you let your son do that too. You know, can't believe you let your son go to law school. What's wrong with you? So what I'm saying is that I look up to lawyers. Alexander Lindsay, anybody know Alexander Lindsay? He teaches CLEs with me, right across the street from you. He won't let anybody tell a lawyer joke in his office. And Al has a great sense of humor. He's a great storyteller. He's a fun person to be with. But he won't let people tell lawyer jokes in his office because it's that professional thing that he wants to protect. Man, we take a pounding. I watch Frasier reruns. And Frasier reruns are fun, but every time they get a chance, they're bashing a lawyer, you know. We get clobbered all the time, and sometimes we clobber each other. And then of course we have our brethren in the medical profession, and some of us are pounding them and pounding back at each other. I'm just not that way. Listen, I'm very confrontational in court, but I'm very much a community person. So part of what I'm talking to you too is about being a community leader. When you walk into a graduation party this summer, when you walk into a wedding, I guarantee you your family and people are whispering about, there's the lawyer. They look up to you and you don't even know it, or maybe you don't appreciate it, but they do. And most people really need you when they need a lawyer, okay? So hopefully, I'm going to try to tap into your community spirit to be a leader and to learn something about this problem and use up your time, if nothing else, and when you leave here, say, that guy taught me something and I had to be there, so I'm glad I did it, okay? So I'm aiming low, but aiming high at the same time. Having said that, the next thing I want to tell you about is that there's several concepts in the way I practice law. Do you guys need a chair? Unfortunately, because you came late, you're going to have to sit up here by us. So there's plenty of seats, and we can move this table here. I'll get my coffee out of the way. We might have a few more people walk in, too. And there's chairs. If you don't like to be in the front, you can drag it in the back. Okay. The next concept that I want to tell you about is a legal concept. And do you guys remember Loeffler? In law school? Do you remember the law school called Conflicts of Law, that class? Conflicts of Law was a really neat class. I loved it because the book was this thin. Remember, the case books were like that. But the conflicts book was kind of non-frightening looking. It looked like something Opie Taylor would carry back and forth to class with a belt around, okay? But that little book, I said, oh my God, I finally got a little book in this class where we're going like this every night, right? How many night students we ever have here? Night school? Duquesne? Okay. Up on the bluff. Remember, they started putting those orange things on your car when you pay parking tickets? That had 2 of them on my car once. So, racing from Newcastle, 70-some miles. There was no 279. Every night I went. Mr. Cunningham. Remember the, what was the name of the, who's Mr. Cunningham? You know Mr. Cunningham, the in the TV show with the fawns. What was that called? Yeah, Mr. Cunningham. That's who Dean Shula looked like. Remember? Yeah. Anyway, so. Tom Boss. Yeah. Thank you. So we're going in and out of law school. We're going to class there, and we're exhausted with all of those books. I used to drive from the assistant principal thing in Newcastle, Pennsylvania, 70-some miles, 4 days a week, blah, blah, blah. But that little book, I believe, of course, we had to learn what was in the big books. But that little book is so important because it talks about the fact that there are very few real conflicts in law. And see, as an attorney, I like to sit down and listen to my client and figure out what their deal is, what they want. And as I'm listening, I have a hard time focusing sometimes because I'm imagining what the other person wants. Because it seems to me as a lawyer, I need to know what the other person wants. Because many times what the other person wants is something I can give the other side. And then I'm working toward a solution. So that's just always been in my head. I don't know if that's a good thing in my head or not. All I know, it has worked for me in 30-some years I've done this business, whether it's a divorce, whether it's criminal law, whether it's commercial law. I want to know what they want, and if I can put a little check mark over there that there's 6 of them that I know I don't care about, and I need to get these, I already have the makings of a solution, okay? But first of all, we need to use procedure now to wiggle our butt in the door. Now, in criminal law, Attorney Zunder can tell you, and you other criminal lawyers out there, you know that your client gets charged with an offense, and your due process panoply of rights start with the information or the knock at the door or the indictment. We have preliminary arraignment. But you non-criminal lawyers, does anybody does not know what preliminary arraignment is? I'm going to tell you anyway. So, tonight I'll be out with my wife for dinner, and somewhere along the line, my words will quit coming back at me, and I'll realize she's not talking to me, and I won't know why she's not talking to me. I won't know why she's not talking to me. I won't even know that I was actually had a preliminary hearing. I had an arraignment. I had waived that. I had been found guilty, and I had been sentenced like that. The worst scuzzball in America walking down the street has major constitutional rights that a husband has none of, okay? And like that, I was convicted. So an arraignment is when they tell you what you're accused of. Now, an arraignment, attorneys under can tell you it's usually skipped. Sometimes we don't even see them until after the arraignment. But the arraignment is already something that's going to be important that I'm going to come back to later on how we begin to put our butt in the door and work on a solution for a criminal problem, okay? And working on the leftward thing. So I'm moving past that now. I'm going to leave those ornaments hover for right now. The next thing that we want to talk about is the fact that in the solution-oriented approach, if I'm sitting there and I walk in and I have a guy, I'm at arraignment or preliminary hearing, or maybe they hired me late and I'm in the middle of a trial, I know that the prosecutor wants some things, and I know that my client wants some things. The prosecutor wants my client to be in jail. The client doesn't want to be in jail. Cousin Vinny, remember My Cousin Vinny? I love that. I love that movie. Who was a guy? By the way, you have to let me do this. These are little exit ramps. It's the only way I can do this and have fun. Because if I can't have fun, I'm leaving. Okay? Because I just want to teach, but I have a little bit of fun. But you remember, was Car 54? He was a big, tall policeman, but then he was in the Munsters too, right? Okay, the judge, Chamberlain Howler, right?
Yeah, Greg Wood.
Yes. So my cousin Vinny is standing there, and he says, I just want you to say not guilty or guilty. He says, Attorney Gambini, you seem to be intent on wanting to skip the Alabama procedures because your client finds himself, and you find yourself in the unusual situation where your client says he didn't do it. Okay? So we know that everybody says he didn't do it. But it's going to take months and months of all kind of procedure to get to a point in time where he probably will be convicted of doing it, okay? So let's take a look at the other side of that journey, okay? And in criminal law, what it works, you got the information, you got the arraignment, you got the preliminary hearing. And it takes me an hour to explain to my client that this isn't the trial. They come all dressed up. They think they're going to testify and everything. And they're going to think, oh, my God, I hope I'm found not guilty. A preliminary hearing is a sufficiency hearing. It just means is there sufficient evidence. In fact, there's pretty strong law out there that seems to suggest that the magistrate can't disbelieve a police officer if he wanted to. Right, Mike? If the police officer has a probable cause sheet and he says what's on that sheet, is he going to be bound over? Yes. Okay? So that's not a trial. Okay, so what happens then is we know now that we're going to be bound over for trial. When we go bound over for trial, we also know that that has a life all of its own. I saw a very dear friend get convicted of something recently that was shocking to me. But I can tell you at age 36, first time in a courtroom, okay? At age 36, first time in a courtroom, I was shocked when I heard that little snap of those bracelets. And I saw people dressed like I was and you were in street clothes and put their hands behind their back and being led away. There's something impacting about that. To this day, it is amazing. You criminal lawyers, right? It's amazing how easy you could get convicted of anything. There's laws you don't even know you're breaking, probably. So, and we've got an attorney general in Pennsylvania, by the way, that's out there. Okay. So there's all kind of people being charged with crimes. And once that thing is bound over, and I just told you how easy that is, once that's bound over for trial, then you're at the mercy of the system at that point in time. And I suggest to you that not even the judge himself could help you, even if he wanted to, because of we have guidelines and sentencing guidelines and things like that. Okay? So it's very important for us to know what the other side of that journey is. So I was a prosecutor for 7 years. When I first got out, my cousin was the DA. He hired me because I needed a job. I think I was making $522 take-home pay every 2 weeks. And I said, wow, am I so glad I left education behind, you know? And so I was a prosecutor, but I was good as a prosecutor. And I am a good lawyer because I know my case and I know how to talk about the facts to the jury. And I convicted a lot of people. And I can tell you, it's anyone's guess whether the jury's going to say guilty or not guilty. So you're at anyone's guess when you actually get to that point in time. So having said that, we know that a lot of things are stacked against the defendant from the minute in time the charges are written up. And I always talk about prosecutorial discretion. I think a district attorney's pen is probably the most powerful thing in the whole civil and criminal system. Because when a district attorney approves charges, and that thing takes off like that and goes through the little journey I just told you about, you're in a heap of trouble. And people are telling you to plead or not plead. Okay, so I'm going back now. Again, disconnecting these thoughts. There's a criminal rule of procedure that we'll talk about that we can use to help you. But all of this being said, and we'll go into more detail later, it's the solution that I want to talk about, and I have my dear friends who have come to help me talk about that. Let's go back to the prosecutor who wants your guy in jail. He doesn't necessarily want your guy in jail. He wants to not be bothered by him again. Every prosecutor that I know gets paid, I think, what do they get paid? They get by $125,000 a year now, Mike? The district attorney about $125,000? Okay, and they get that pay no matter what. They get that. It might be more, huh? The DA himself. It's closer to $200,000. And they get it, though, whether they have cases or not. So if I'm going to get that, you know what's really weird? I always talk about this idea that people usually are all broke. They're just broke at different levels. So after you get used to that salary, you don't even realize you're getting that salary. But all you know is that if I have 10 cases this week, I have 10 cases worth of work. If I have no cases this week, I have no work to do and I still get the money. Okay, we know they don't really want the work after you get used to the money. And that's just human. I'm not bashing DAs. The judge gets paid whether or not he's on the bench or not. He likes it when he's not on the bench, okay? So if we can keep the DA getting paid and we can keep him from having to work and we can keep the judge off the bench, then that's going to be something that they would like too. And my guy doesn't want to go to jail, but they don't want to do this 12 times because he's a criminal and he's exposing society to a danger. So if we take a crime that is connected and almost completely undermined by substance abuse, and we can eliminate the substance abuse, we have eliminated the recidivism, we have eliminated the next time they're on trial. It worked, Bruce. That was a test, by the way. My phone did not go off this morning or else I slept through it, whatever. We'll cut that out. Okay, so that led me to where I'm at right now. All of this bouncing around in several careers and whatnot, and it led me to a doctor's office. The first case I had was in Butler County. I'll never forget, as a defense attorney, a person was charged with possession with intent to deliver. Possession with intent to deliver. Now, possession is what we call simple possession. Possession with intent to deliver takes us up a notch, right, attorneys? That's felony, right? And we got the felony, and that's a different thing than possession. So my guy is charged with possession with intent to deliver. It's in Butler County. One of the female judges in Butler County now was a magistrate at that time, and I showed up, and I talked to the policeman, and the policeman was willing to work with me, and the guy was, we traded it and made it possession. So it was not. And my guy was going to get probation. His parents paid me. I bill at $275 an hour. We'll do that in the afternoon class. And I calculate what I estimate the hours are going to be and ask for a retainer up front. Anyway, the bottom line was it was $3,500 and I was done and out the door, and the family liked me. It was like really good. It was like, it was cool. Made a car payment or two out of that, and it was helping our overhead. I get a phone call about 2 weeks later that he got charged again. The same guy got charged 3 times before I could ever plead him on the first charge. The policeman knew his whereabouts. He wasn't the smartest criminal in the world, too, by the way. They're not basically geniuses. When I was an assistant principal, I'll never forget the first prosecution I had. I walked in. I was a little bit nervous, but hey, where I come from, I'm a fake it till you make it guy, right? If I'm scared, you're not going to know it. I walked in with the best navy blue suit I opened up my little briefcase. I'm a first-year prosecutor at age 36. I look over, and there's the guy I suspended the last time I was an assistant principal. And he looked at me like, what the hell are you doing here? And I said, what the hell are you doing here? I see you're not any better at getting away with anything, are you? You know, and that was my first foray into the criminal justice system. So I got the kids' parents in my office. I know these people. We're talking 2 more charges, $3,500, right? Okay, that's going to make a lot of car payments, but that's not good business. We don't. He looked at me like, it was like weird. He looked at me like Dean Shula did when I got accepted at Duquesne University, by the way. I was on a waiting list, and I sat there the first day of class, and he went past, and I said, listen, if you got an empty chair in there, you don't need to call long distance. I'm on your waiting list. True story. He said, anybody who wants to go to law school that bad, and Duquesne University can go to law school that bad. Come with me. And he pointed in a chair and told me to sit down. Anyway, that's how I'm standing in here in front of you. So I was at Akron University at the time. I had already 2 weeks under my belt. They started earlier. So I'm talking to him, and he says he has this thing called naltrexone. And he says if you put naltrexone in your mouth, you can't get high on opiates or alcohol. I mean, if you try, you can't. It will disable your reward system. And I said, holy cow. I mean, I'm already at Loeffler again, right? I'm thinking, if I could stand in front of the judge and show the judge that I have a pattern, that this is why this guy does this, and I have a pill, a magic pill in my mind, that's going to prevent him from being able to do this, I might have a way around this 2.5 years he's going to do in prison. And I started to, I'm telling you, that was years ago, 15 to 18 as far as I know, and I started working on this model. And we've been working ever since, and we're coming now today to tell you. So I think rather than tax the patience of my colleagues here, so nice to come down on a Saturday morning, I'm going to let them talk to you about the medical aspects of that, because I normally do it and I butcher it. So Jim, I was going to have you go first, okay? Is that all right, Joe?
Both together, too.
Or both together, yeah. You guys are going to work together. So they're going to talk to you about the medicine aspects of that. Now, this is where you switch your hat and say, oh, God, I'm here. I'm not even a criminal lawyer. But this is where you switch your hat and learn something very, very valuable, because this is startling, breathtaking, new information. You can't believe what you don't know. You can't believe how close we are to literally a cure, not just a cure, a non-narcotic cure. So Bruce is going to do some paperwork for some new guys that just came in. While we shuffle some chairs around here, Jim, I have a pointer, if you have anything you guys want to point to. And I have all of you guys, by the way, already have your book emailed to you. Did you know that? They make me stand up here and say this, okay? That I have a 56-page book that you got in an email, and you probably don't even know you got it. So I don't know why CAPE does that, other than maybe the paper and the shipping and all that stuff. But I'll tell you what, be honest with you, you really wouldn't be able to keep up with me in it anyway. It's a good resource for you later, and it's in your email. And if not, you make sure you let us know. And Jim, if you need me to be like, hand anything out, or you need me to chime in at any time, I'm going to have you guys come up and talk about all the medical things that you guys know and things we're doing. So this is Dr. Jim Barber. Jim, where do you live in Swickley?
In Swickley.
And where was your practice?
In Swickley.
Okay, you're going to tell them that. Yeah. Okay, and this is Dr. Joe Goth. They're basically partners and friends of ours, and I'm going to shut up and get myself out of the way and go in the back of the room.
I married Angela when I went to high school. And he was a girl back at that time. I did a sex change.
By the way, Dante, please edit that out. He said that in front of a whole class of school kids.
Before we start, I just have a question. I was just asking the gentleman back there. You guys are attorneys. If you have unwanted sex with a prostitute, is it rape or shoplifting? That puzzled me for years. I didn't know that. Anyway, what Angela was talking about is something that's unique. I mean, what we've done, and Joe and I have been involved with this for a long time.
Time out. Should I be giving him the mic?
Yes, please.
I'm sorry. And I'm glad the mic missed that last part.
I'll show you a picture.
So they probably should just share it, right?
Yes.
I'm going to lay this here. The cord's only so long. Okay.
I mean, I have a backup, but yes, that's
good.
ideal.
All right.
We have, as Angela has pointed out, and Joe can attest to, we have a tremendous problem with addiction in this country right now, with drugs, with alcohol, etc. Being a doctor for years now, they're really clamping down on physicians, how much we can prescribe to, post-operatively on the opioids, which is good. Because now, if you look at some of the statistics in this country right now, there's almost twice as many people who die from prescription drugs now that die from heroin and cocaine because of the overdosing. And it's because, you have pill mills where doctors come in and try to make money off it and do this, and it's all this kind of stuff. The toughest thing that we know for these addicts, and we've had a lot of them, and everybody has stories that they know, people that their family, their friends, everybody who's passed away doing this. I have a friend of mine who's a plastic surgeon. I took him into my practice when he first got out of medical school and stuff. And he told me a story that he and his sister were going up to New York to meet his sister's son, his nephew. And they were supposed to meet at a hotel in New York. And they went there, and they were pulling in the hotel, and out comes a gurney with the EMTs on it. And they walked in, and they look at it. That was his nephew, had overdosed, and they were taking him out of the hotel and died. How do you ever get over something like that? You don't. But now we have the ability to be able to put a program together, a total program that can look at addiction and say, hey, listen, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. We got a chance now to be able to help you get over what you went through. We have a chance to get you off of drugs. We have a chance now to end this addiction clinic, things that we're seeing across the country. Joe, anything Joe will test to you too and tell you that stuff.
Well, how many people do you know that have been affected by opioids, drugs? Any family members? Any close friends that have had family members?
Yeah.
I mean, I think everybody in the room can raise their hand and say, yes, I know somebody. My interest in this, I went back to a member of my family. He's called a son. My wife and I were separated. I would see him every Tuesday, every other weekend. She would take care of the kids nonstop, but all of a sudden he starts failing school. He was a championship swimmer in the North Allegheny School District, and he starts failing. The C's went to D's, went to F's, and his urge to swim went away. We had no idea what was going on. She found paraphernalia in his room. And please keep this inside this room, okay? I'm not going to mention his name. The only thing he didn't do was heroin. He did everything else. He would be driving downtown at 13 years of age, totally messed up in a car by himself. And he didn't tell his mom this, he would confide with me. So we started going to counseling in Gateway, and I never thought this kid is never going to even make it into high school or graduate from high school. So all of a sudden, he somehow, after he was inpatient, outpatient, calls me up one day. He says, Dad, I'm off the drugs. I said, congratulations. I didn't believe him. Buy me cigarettes. I buy him tons of cigarettes. 6 months later, he says, guess what? You don't have to pay any more money on cigarettes. I'm off cigarettes. He's turning 25 on Monday, and he got a Dean's Scholarship partial Dean's Scholarship to Duquesne University. Now he owns his own energy company because he was able to do this on his own. Angelo has been after me for a number of years to get involved with this program. Now I'm a board-certified oral surgeon, physician, dentist, busy at what I do. And I said, Ange, I don't know if this is going to fit into my life. But when he hit me about a year and a half ago with a program we're going to talk to you today, I said, you know what, this hits home. Because I have a family member that went through this, but fortunately, is doing incredibly well. And he mostly did it on his own. He didn't have the stuff that we're going to share with you today. We're developing a brand new system, an institution, so to speak, that we're going to carry around the United States. We've already set one up in Newcastle, a clinic. We call them VRN beta sites. We have one down in Bonita, Florida, at a dentist's office, and I work part-time for this gentleman, and we got him to open up his own site down there. We have one in Chandler, Arizona. We just opened one in Altoona and Greensburg. Dr. Cheng, who's a tremendous dentist, set his own VRN beta site over there. Why don't let me go through some of the things about this?
Either way, we can do it together.
Anyway, I don't want to dominate the floor here because Jim has a great gift to talk, a couple of jokes probably, but to carry forward, Angelo comes down to a Mexican restaurant in Moon Township. I'd say a year and a half ago, maybe a little bit longer. He says, "I want to meet with you. I'll take you out to dinner." So I meet with him. My wife is there at the time, and he shows me this brochure. He said, "This is what it's all about. Look at that thing. Yeah, it looks pretty cool." And did some research on it, did a lot of research on it, did a lot of reading on it. And I said, "Oh, my God, we finally have a device that will detox people within an hour." Now, does that hit home? We finally have a device that will detox people within an hour. It only takes 10 minutes to tape it to the neck. There's leads that go into the meridian points of the ears that go to certain cranial nerves that will detox them. Now, have I seen this? Yes. Gentleman down in Florida, he was a major alcoholic, and the system was we put him through an assessment, an online assessment. They passed the assessment. We call him up, and then he comes to the office one day, and I'm there to greet him in Bonita, Florida. His name's John. John comes walking in. John's a binge drinker. He drinks vodka. He needs to keep his job. He's divorced. He's got two daughters who need their dad. They need him to be sober. He says, I need this. He's a little clammy. His blood pressure's up. He's very, very nervous, very, very anxious because he hadn't drank for a couple of days in preparation for this. I put that device on him, monitor his blood pressure, took good care of him, counseled him. An hour later, he's driving. He texts me, he says, "This is freaking amazing. I can't believe it. I feel good. I have no cravings. I'm calm. I'm not sweating. I feel relaxed." Just like that. I said, "Man, we did it. We hit the mother load." And we had another patient went through the same thing with opiates, right? But the problem with John was we didn't have the counseling set up. Okay? Counseling is incredibly important as part of the three-legged kind of a stool that we have to promote this. Okay? You have the device that's going to get them off this stuff. It's going to make them feel better for up to 5 days. But if they don't have the counseling along with that, plus the other thing, naltrexone, as Angela said, which is given intramuscular, okay, it's called Vivitrol. Those are the two other components that John really needed, but we started him into the Vivitrol. But the counseling hadn't really been set up yet. John failed counseling, first of all, is because he didn't show up, he made excuses, but we really didn't have it set up. So through trial and error, we've learned what we need to do. So the counseling piece of this, we've already set up. I forget, what's the gentleman's name, Angelo?
Steve Troy.
Steve Troy.
The Butler guy.
Yeah, phenomenal. If this guy was here today, he gave a speech about what he does, you guys would be in tears. He's unbelievable, and he's going to set up the counseling along with another gentleman that's going to go over the United States of America. So we finally have the three things, okay? The idea is to put them through the assessment. Number one, it's online. Okay, identify their problems, identify if they're a good patient or a client. You don't want somebody's going to, say, I want to commit suicide tomorrow. They're not the right one. Okay, we're not going to save everybody. We identify those people. We get them to counseling right away. The counselor sets up their expectations. He gets into spirituality and a lot of other things that go along with that. Pretty cool. And then we put the device on. On the 5th day, he gets Vivitrol and the device comes off, and the Vivitrol acts as a blockade. It'll block that person from wanting any further drugs. Now I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Jim Barber now.
Thanks, guys.
Let me explain to you in detail how this works then, okay? Basically, this device is an electrical stimulation that goes to the brain. We know, if you cut yourself on your foot, it sends a signal to the brain. I just got cut. The brain says, I'm hurting, and sends a thing that says, I'm in pain. What if we could block those symptoms? This is what this does. It sends an electrical stimulation to the amygdala in different areas of the brain so that it shuts down the nausea. You don't feel nauseous anymore. You don't feel pain anymore. You don't feel anxiety anymore. It shuts down those things. So even though they may be going on, you're not experiencing them anymore. You can't feel it because we've affected that area of the brain that reacts to those things. What this device does then, it's placed behind the ear. It gives a stimulation that does this and tells the brain, you don't feel this anymore. It's left on for 5 days. After 20 minutes, 67% of what we call the COWS score. COWS score is something that comes in, the patient, we look at him and say, show us your symptoms you have. Are you sweating? Do you have anxiety? Are you nauseous? Do you have pain? They evaluate the patient's status of where they are with the COWS score. After 20 minutes, 67% of those symptoms are gone. Within 30 minutes, 80% of those symptoms are gone. Within 1 hour, 85% of those symptoms are gone. So everybody who's tried to go through detox, and they sit there, and they start, I say, I'm not going to take this anymore, I can do this. They start getting these symptoms. They're throwing up, their anxiety, their nose is running, they're sweating. The first thing they do is say, I can't go through these, I can't do this. They take the drugs again and start doing it. The toughest thing we have up until this time is getting people over those symptoms of withdrawal, the things that really makes them turn back to what we're doing. This device is left on for 5 days. You can shower, you can walk, you can do whatever you like. It just sends information there. After 5 days, 97%, 97.1% actually, of the symptoms are gone with that device. You can see this little device looks like a hearing aid. It's behind your ear. It's really easy to do. 97.1% of those people. And the most incredible thing of this is that 88.8% of people who put this device on go through the entire system of medically assisted withdrawal to be able to do this, which is unbelievable compared to people who go into rehab clinics, and you may have 10% of those people actually finish and do this. So now we can attack this in this way. And as Joe said, we'll do an assessment on a person. We want to know psychologically, where do you stand right now? But when we give these people light at the end of the tunnel by showing them these symptoms are gone, up until this time it never worked for them. You know, they go someplace, they're banging their heads off a wall. I got to get out of this place. I got to take these drugs. If we show them, hey, what happened? It's only been an hour and I'm not feeling this way anymore. Do I get a chance? I got a chance to do this now. And we talked about this the other day. They worry about this. They do this. They don't think they can do this. And we gave a little slogan the other day. Be a warrior, not a worrier. You can beat this. You never thought you could. You said it was impossible up until this time. But if you look at the word impossible, it says I'm possible. You can do it. This gives them hope that they can get over the hump to do this. So this is what we do. We take away the symptoms. They know they now have a chance. They can go home with this. They can walk around with this. They can do things like this. Then what we do is we continue the counseling. The counseling, as Joe alluded to and as Steve Troy did the other night, is phenomenal. It lets them know you can generate the things that give you the highs in your own body. You hug your daughter, you get a high, you feel so good. You know, you win a race, you feel so good. You exercise, you feel good after that. The endorphins you release, all those things in your body. These are ways you can generate them yourselves instead of having to take drugs to do this. And this is what Steve Troy does. He actually counsels these people how they can stimulate their own body initiatives to be able to get rid of the symptoms you're having. And then we go to the next phase, the Vivitrol. Up until this time, you look at Suboxone, you look at all these things that people are taking. Those are additives. They basically are drugs. They don't do anything. They're just not as bad as heroin and cocaine. So you're taking those things, they give you a little high, but it's not as bad as those things. They are what we call agonists. They stimulate the brain to give you a little high. Vivitrol is an antagonist. What it does is it shuts down that. It doesn't give you a high anymore. If you took an opioid, you're not getting a high anymore off it. You're not feeling that high anymore. It's blocking those areas of the brain that tell you that you got a high off of this. So now what we can do is look at you and say, listen, you got a chance. We're going to give you light at the end of the tunnel. All your symptoms are gone right now. You can do this. We're going to counsel you and say, hey, listen, why did this start in the first place? Is it because, you're psychologically unbest? Is it a mixing of medications you're taking to do this? What is it? And then we can block the brain. There's one injection a month that we can go for 3 months, 5 months, 6 months to get you over that hump to be able to do this. So now at the end, you're saying, I can do this. There are other things we can do down the road, too. We sat down, Angela and I sat down with Mike Terzai. In fact, we just got a grant. They got grants already in Butler County to be able to put this program in. And we're going up in June to meet with them in Harrisburg, a big meeting, a big march on Harrisburg to be able to talk about how we can stop this opioid addiction, these prescription drug addictions in doing this. We literally now can look at this entire system and say, this is how we can implement this and do this. It's something that's not been done before. It's something that's unique, and it's something that can capture everything we're doing. There are tests we can do down the road. People sometimes then take a medication. Let's say they come to a doctor's office, we put them on Percocet, okay? Percocet and these things are made for people who generally metabolize that in the same way, who's take it in, it goes through their liver, they get the nice reduction of pain medications. Some people don't have the normal metabolism. They're what we call poor metabolizers. They get 28% of the efficacy of that medication. So if you just had hip surgery, rotator cuff surgery, and you're getting 28% of the relief, so you have 75%, 72% of the pain still. You take 2 of the pain meds, you take 3 of the pain meds to try to get rid of it. You become addicted. Now with things like pharmacogenetic testing, those things that we can enter down the road, you can look at that person and say, you shouldn't have taken this in the first place. That's why you got addicted. You were a poor metabolizer. You shouldn't take this. Some people are what we call ultra-rapid metabolizers. Those people are in dire trouble. They take the medication, and instead of going into your bloodstream over an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours, they get it in 5 minutes. If you look at Tylenol with codeine on the black box warning inside it when you buy it, there's they quote a thing there, well, a woman was pregnant. She had a baby. They put her on Tylenol with codeine, C-section. They gave her Tylenol with codeine. They do that for about 30% of women who have babies. She was breastfeeding her baby. She was a normal metabolizer. Normal metabolizer. She did it. She was getting constipated taking the medication. She cut back the dose in half. The baby was an ultra-rapid metabolizer, and she was breastfeeding. The baby got 40 times the lethal dose because of the different metabolizers and died from breastfeeding. So now there's actually a warning on there that they say, listen, who are going to again. It's going to happen again. What if we can tell you what medicines we can do? And it's not only for pain meds. They get an interaction of the antidepressants, the benzodiazepines, the muscle relaxants. All those things interact with everything to give you that high, and they can, put you in danger. We can look at all these medications now, from blood thinners and everything, and bleed to death or throw a stroke again. We can look at these and say, this is where you should be.
Hey, Doc, can you and me and Joe share the mic a minute to
Yeah.
develop? I want to go in depth of some of the earlier things we talked about. So,
Can I ask one quick question?
Sure. Well,
Does
well,
the naltrexone shut down the entire pleasure center, or it shuts down the ability of the opiate to trigger the pleasure center?
It'll shut down the specific things for opioids to be able to, in other words, they bind at certain places. GABA binds someplace.
You're still going to have fun if you see it steal his weight.
Absolutely, yeah. Or pit wing.
that's an interesting question because we, Joe, let's move over here where we can all fit. And Dante, are we still in the camera?
Yes.
Because in addition to playing to you, we're filming this. We want to make sure that if he yells at us, he needs to, because he has to get this what he calls in the can, right? Okay, so, and you yell if we need to pass this around or if somebody...
will yell.
Okay, very good. Now, that's an interesting question. I actually had in my career a lady try to sue one of my doctors because she couldn't get high on it anymore. It's a true story. She threatened to sue.
I had a patient one time who wanted to report me because I wouldn't write him prescriptions for pain medications because I knew the guy was an addict.
Right.
And that's in it. And basically I threw it out and said, this is ridiculous. But he said, I'm going to turn you into it because you won't write me a prescription for Percocet. I said, I'm not doing it because you're an addict. I said, I'm not going to do it.
And now that that's there, I'm going to take that. When I used to teach school, when I have something, I'm going to run with it. Mike can tell you, he's talking to a jury and you see a certain person's face light up, you know you got something and you're going there. Okay, so some of this is going to be hodgepodge, but it's important for you to know. I am strongly recommending to anybody in here who wants to read a really cool book. And listen, I am not a person who enjoys reading. I'm ashamed to say that on tape. I've never enjoyed reading. Reading is hard for me. I think that's why I was struggling in elementary school, but whatnot. But I love this book. It's called Dreamland. It's I've seen nods. You've read it. It's an amazing book, and it talks about how one of our biggest part of our drug problem has been that issue you had, and that is that if you take a look, there's a guy named Arthur Sackler, okay, and he's been in the news recently. He's dead. He's been in the news recently. His whole family was worth a lot of money. They called him the ad man, and the ad man actually started pharmaceutical advertising, and advertising then started to, and there was a little company called Purdue. Purdue was out there, and I think what were they into? Like something like laxatives or something of all things, Purdue. And Purdue was a little struggling company that was controlled by them. And as we move the needle through life, and we now have, this is World War II era stuff here, advertising for medicines and medication, we start to, and we saw this in our careers, right? Some of you guys with gray hair like me saw this when advertising wasn't cool with lawyers, and now it's not as restrictive. Well, you know, you always see the other side sometimes. The advertising restraints for professionals, and I'm not a restraint guy, but I saw in this book how the medicine advertising started what? Attracting customers, pandering, getting people telling them what you... I always tell my clients, I'm going to tell you what you need to hear, which may not be what you want to hear. That's what a professional does. Okay, so Dr. Barber's talking to his patient like that, and they're getting pouty. Well, that all started over years ago, and we started evolving into a right to be free from pain. America stood all by itself against England, against France, when we normally lead the way in depravity sometimes, right? We stood all by ourselves against narcotics. And the narcotics, the pandering started. And there was a movement to, you have a right to be free from pain. The VA administrations called pain, what? Absence of pain, a vital sign. They actually called it a vital sign. And that's, doctors, what's the difference between a vital sign and the absence of pain? What's a vital sign?
Well, it's your blood pressure, your heart rate. I mean, that's a vital sign. Your respiratory rate.
And whether you're in pain or not has never been a vital sign, has it?
No.
Okay, so they started a movement, and that movement started, and you some of you may have experienced this. You walk in a hospital. I got my hip replaced. I was in a car accident. Mr. Papa, what's your pain on a score of 1 to 10? I'm a 10. 10. I'm 10, right? I don't know if that nurse is coming back in the next 2 hours or not, but I want something in case she does, right? So that's really what so you give the patient the right to say 1 to 10 what your pain is, and you're handed narcotics in relation to that. And this person is taught in that hospital, and these doctors are taught inferentially that you need to make sure the patient wants to come back here, okay? So now that you can see where the tail starts to wag the dog. And we start to go down that slippery slope. It took probably 60 years with all of that mental thing and all this thing. And remember Valium? When Valium first came out, it's in the book too. The Valium came out. They thought it was a miracle drug. Every woman in America has all kind of problems that a man doesn't have. You need Valium, okay? And Valium is itself a narcotic also. So here we are now, 8.5% of the United States population over age 12 have a substance abuse problem. That's 25 million Americans. That's a March 2013 figure. It's more like 40 now. More than lung, breast, and prostate cancer combined are people with substance problem. Okay? So we are community leaders, right? We're people who can put doctors and lawyers together as community team players and do something about it, okay? And start to reverse that, because it's my opinion that legal addicts, those being prescribed, many times are as numerous as the ones we talk about on the streets, okay? So, and plus, we haven't even talked about alcohol. By the way, this naltrexone works on alcohol too, right?
Yep. Yes. Yes.
Okay, so
So it works on opiates and alcohol?
yes. And it does, it amazes me, but it specifically gets the receptors in the brain that deal with that. And there was a discussion, a think tank discussion about what are the major things, flight, fright, sex, or something like that, the major, doesn't touch any of those places, okay, the flight, fright, sex, okay? It amazes me that something is possible. I'm a lawyer, I'm not a doctor. I don't know how you could possibly isolate a receptor in a brain that only deals with opiates and alcohol, but it does, okay? And that's what the naltrexone does. Having said that, I want to develop a couple more points that they talked about. How many people in here think there's such a thing as a magic pill or a magic shot? I led it out there for you. Nobody's going to raise their hand in the face of that question. Talk about Michael, when I'm in court, right? Leading question, Your Honor. Mr. Papist, shut up. You know better than that. Rephrase it, okay? So there is no such thing as a magic shot or a magic pill or a magic anything. And we're up here to tell you, and we all have gray hair, and we're all proud that we still have our hair too. We all have gray hair, but we're here to tell you in our collective wisdom, being alive, I think we became experts at being alive, expert witnesses in Pennsylvania. The law is very clear that it doesn't take much to call yourself an expert. I am calling myself on record as an expert at being all kind of an expert on what not to do, okay? I can tell you by personal experience, and I'll challenge anybody, the expertise that I have, that I can show you better ways to screw something up than you ever dreamed of, okay? But I am merely telling you that as a person being alive, and us in our professions here, we know that the main player in any problem is the player, is the addict or the alcoholic. So Jim touched on that. Dr. Barber and Dr. Goff touched upon it too with his son. And I know his son. He's like a really cool person. Anyway, so what we touched upon is the fact that inside of us, inside of our spirit, our heart, we have everything necessary to beat anything. We have proven it in every world war. We have proven it in every conflict we've ever had. And so did you in law school and passing the bar exam. You proved that when the money's on the table, you're going to deliver. You just need sometimes to be pushed. So we're saying, are we not, that the naltrexone is kind of like a firewall. It keeps that craving out of their face. The detoxing device helped us get to the naltrexone. But the bridge nor the naltrexone is itself the answer. The answer is the firewall. And then we get to Stephen Troy. And Stephen Troy is a doctor that I met. Well, he's not a doctor. He's a licensed counselor. But he's a person who I met by accident in this little journey we have doing one of these classes. He's written a book. And there is a science to getting high on life. Nancy Reagan 40 years ago said, just say no, right? Well, Nancy Reagan had it right, but who had the power to say no in the face of those cravings, right? So we still live? You okay? The empowerment is basically what we're telling you that we're about here. So that when we put the firewall around the person and 24/7 they're not puking their guts up, they're not feeling they have to have knives puncturing their skin. These are common cow score symptoms, by the way. They're not respirating and twitching. They're not throwing up in a jail cell. When we take that away, we have a corridor of time here in which we can talk to them, and maybe they'll first hear us for the first time. So if Joe and Jimmy and I were up, and Dante Ludovici here from Video Standard is filming this, and I covered this microphone. And did you just lose the sound? What? Did you just lose the sound? Did you just lose the sound? That's good. I want you to say that. Because guess what? That's what an addict does when you're talking to him. That's what an alcoholic does when you're talking to him. That's what an addict does when you're talking to him. You didn't hear a word I said. Some of you are going to be watching this years from now or minutes from now. You didn't hear me, and neither did that addict, and neither did that alcoholic, because of that craving that was strangling them. Okay? So it's not magic, but it's a magical barrier so we can now reach them and start counseling. On my lapel. Okay, so the next thing that happens in this little triad, okay, the next thing that happens is extended care counseling. No magic shot, no magic anything. Extended care, extended care. We're talking months, okay? And the extended care counseling that these gentlemen have alluded to is what we call one, only need endorphins. Did I put it upside down?
Yes.
Only need endorphins. Do I need to repeat any of that?
No,
Extended care. Only need endorphins. One, only, need endorphins. Doctors, help me a little bit. What is an endogenous morphine?
Those are things we talked about in your body. Dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins. Those are things you know when you do. You exercise, after a while you feel good after you do it. You hug somebody, your little grandkids. It gives you that feeling of highs and joy. Those are normal highs that we have in our body that give us the symptoms of, hey, I feel good. So
and that's basically endogenous means internal, right?
Endogenous means in your body. Exogenous is when you take something to get high.
So if I say endogenous morphine, we have morphine in our bodies.
Well, you have those type of things in your body. Yeah,
right, and that when that's triggered, that will reach a receptor and make you feel good. Most people in this room are not alcoholics or addicts. Why? Because your endogenous stimulation system is functioning alive and well. Something's going to happen to you today. Maybe something already did happen to you, for all we know. Something's going to happen to you today that's going to make you feel good about yourself today. So you have to get out of bed, go out there, go to work, and something happens. You shake hands with an attorney before you go into court. You win a case. All kind of things. Joe Goth, I'll bet, got high when his son started responding. Now, the addict and the alcoholic can't do that. So the endogenous, the one endorphin-producing counsel, we're talking about science that we share. What is known now is that getting high on life is a science, and there are exercises for it.
Those are things you can do to actually train your body into enjoying life and doing these things. Like, I've known Joe for 35 years. I've always looked up to him, obviously.
So have I. We all have.
But those are things that you can do to be able to train your body to do these things, to be able to do. And these are things that you can teach. And this is what Steve Troy did the other night. He taught us these things. These are things in your body. Every day you go through, there's some things that, give you the high. I'm sitting here, you mentioned the Steelers. When they win, we all feel good. I see a Pitt jersey over there. I love you. We beat Penn State. I'm excited. It's the best thing in the world. So those are things that literally give us the normal highs in our body. Unfortunately, we may only get those now, 10 hours from now, 3 days from now. What if there were things that we could do to teach our bodies how to enjoy those type of moments when they're small moments, little moments? Let somebody go past you, in a car, and you wave at them and say thank you. Those little things that you do that are so mundane, but are so good that could give you a nice high in your body. Those are things that Steve now can actually teach these addicts, these people, after we detox them, after we get them through the phases, after we do the counseling, about how literally now to enjoy every moment of their life. Yesterday is history, tomorrow's a mystery, and today's a gift. That's why we call it the present. So live today, live every moment that you have, and basically enjoy it with all these endorphins in your body that you can do. And that's what Steve can do for us.
While you're barricaded away from the bad endorphins.
That's exactly right. It's taking you away from this type of, things that can give you the high, the stuff that can make you, respiratory distress and die, to the things in your body that you can now generate yourself to make you feel good during the day.
But the endorphins are still, it's an opiate, right? It's like an opiate. So
Well, it gives you a normal high, but it's not it doesn't have the side effects that an opioid taking
No, I
it.
know, but when you block the opiate receptors, you're saying it doesn't block the endorphin.
It doesn't. It'll block it'll fit in where the opioids would fit into that area. Yeah, because there's different things in your body like GABA, things that block for oxytocin. Every area in the brain is different. This still lets you get the highs in doing these.
Just to share with you, there's some science, by the way. This is pretty new stuff. And there's still some debate on whether or not in the height of most of your Vivitrol injection, whether you would actually be inhibited. And part of our counseling is retraining when people transition off of the Vivitrol, just in case it has slowed the natural endorphin production process. So that's kind of like an iffy area that's not known yet, but that's all the more reason to have the extended care counseling.
And the other thing you want to do with this, especially if you're going to block the opioids, toxicology screenings are good, and we've talked about this. You want to make sure that somebody is off the drugs before they start the Vivitrol. Because if you're blocking the brain and telling you, hey, you're not going to get high on this opioid, what can happen is they'll try to take the opioids. If you don't do a toxicology, they may take twice the dosage, and they'll still affect their respiratory, their other, systems in their body that can really damage them and kill them. But basically, you want a toxicology, say, hey, they're not on any drugs. We can start the Vivitrol right now. So there's precautions that we use. The doctor, we tell them about that. We tell them the pros and cons of everything we do. And this is the way the system has to be pushed in. And that's what Angelo's done. He's put together this system, the tripod system that we have. The bridge, the counseling, the Vivitrol, and the little things in between we talked about, how to manage that and say, hey, he's not ready for Vivitrol yet. He's still on drugs. Or, hey, do you want to test your family? We can do this if you want to make sure in the future you have an insurance policy against these people getting it. There's certain things that we can enter. Yes, sir?
What about about drugs like Lyrica and gabapentin? Does it have any effect on those?
They
types
can.
of
They can
medications?
interact with different things. And basically, like with toxicology screening,
Yeah.
you can see how each one of those interact with each other and how they can progress and cause you. You may not get high enough on this, but if you're taking a muscle relaxant or you're taking, an antidepressant, they can all add up to give you and block it. So those are things we want to test for.
In my oral surgery practice, obviously we tend to a lot of different types of patients, and it's amazing over the last really 5 years how many more patients are coming in who are on Suboxone or methadone. And you think those people are easy to treat? They are brutal, because anesthesia with them is very, very difficult. These people are on Suboxone and methadone. Mr. Troy, who's our counselor, actually is part of a lot of other clinics that prescribe Suboxone and methadone. So we look at that as low-hanging fruit. They're going to be much easier to treat because they've been able to get down off their methadone and Suboxone to a certain degree. So low-hanging fruit means they're going to be easy to treat. So we're not just going after the typical addicts that are on the street running around like crazy. We are going after people who are taking Suboxone and methadone, because that's really another narcotic. It has tremendous side effects as well. And so when I'm doing cases on these people, my office manager always gets computerized form about Suboxone and methadone. Are they on these things? Therefore, we know how to treat them better with our anesthesia and the protocols we have.
Guys, can I just grab that 1 second? I'm a microphone hog, by the way. My wife will tell you that I keep an inflatable podium in the trunk of my car in case anybody wants to hear a speech, and you're going to walk into that today. But this is very important. This is the empowerment that comes from non-narcotic, okay? So let's remember one thing here. If there's a sworn enemy to anything in our association, and we would like to enlist you, is that we have in our crosshairs anything that takes away, and you're attorneys, and I don't care, we have conservative attorneys and liberal attorneys in here and whatnot, and all kind of variations from the number of shoe sizes in this room here. But the one thing we have always been vigilant is freedom. We are about freedom, and we're not going to let anyone touch our freedom. So what's in our crosshairs is anything that is ingested or taken into the body that robs the client of freedom. Literally, the worst historical tyrants in history, on the ash heap of history, none of them can do what something that goes into your body and takes you out of control of you. And nothing is more effective than taking you out of control than narcotics. If you took 1,000 vitamins, your body would excrete them, right, doctors?
Yes.
You can't get more. You take 100 of them, it doesn't matter. Your body's going to hold. But the morphine molecule defies every body excretory function to get rid of. Methadone is a narcotic. Suboxone, buprenorphine, is a narcotic. They are controlled. They're a treatment. And we're not bad-mouthing any treatment. Anybody who's treating people is a friend of ours. But we think it's time now that we aim higher. When I taught public school, you had a gigantic bell. 2% of the people were they were gifted intellectually, 2% were special needs, and there was this giant bell in the middle. So too often we think we have been aiming low. We want to aim at total abstinence. That's zero tolerance for any narcotic. Total abstinence. Total abstinence. Non-narcotic treatment. And that means, unfortunately, you might be in a methadone clinic, you might be in a Suboxone clinic, but you won't be in one of our. We don't do both. We are specializing, this group is specializing in non-narcotic. There are people out there who pay lip service to the naltrexone blockade. They say they do it, but they're mostly pushing the narcotic thing out the side of the door. So I'm suggesting that this is a chance for the legal profession to actually help all of us join together to rein in both professions, to bring about some meaningful reform.
Just a couple other points here that are really important too. It's so important what VRN now has put together. The counseling is so important, and I'm going to tell you. You see these patients who die on opioids because of the symptoms they have on this. But you don't see the fact of how many people who are on opioids commit suicide because they don't think there's any hope to their life. I mean, it's an incredible thing. A good friend of mine who played for years with the Pittsburgh Penguins. His wife was my patient, came in the office several times. Basically, she became an alcoholic. They got divorced. She then ended up doing some stupid things, stealing stuff and all. She was in jail. She only had like a $500 or $5,000 bail to get out of jail. They didn't want to pay that because they were going to hope that she would go through detox for her alcoholism in the jail. She hung herself in the jail and killed herself. Those are the little things that we don't see, the things that turn out and we don't think about. I was a plastic surgeon for years, and I would have so many patients who came in who literally see themselves so much differently than anybody else does, what we call body dysmorphic dysfunctioning. And they would look at things and they point things out to you, and you look at them and go, I don't see what you're talking about. There's nothing there. But it's been harboring them, getting on them, and killing them because all their lives, all they think about is things that they see in a mirror, but nobody else sees. I had a lady bring a 5-foot mirror into my office, sat in the waiting room, because you can't see this line in your mirror, doctor. I had to bring my mirror from home to show you. Those are the kind of people that we would see who don't have a real, focus on life. I had a lady tell me her Maharishi levitated over her bed at night and told her to have a nose job. These are the kind of people that were out there because they see things differently in life. This whole system we put together gets you over the withdrawal. This is the toughest thing because you don't think you can shake it anymore. You can't do it, and I'm not going to go through that crap anymore. I'm not going to do this. The counseling that allows us to psychologically look at you and say, why is this happening for you? The testing we can do to say, hey, listen, it wasn't your fault you got addicted in the first place. This is because your metabolism is not the same. And then basically blocking those brain signals that allow you to get high anymore and say, hey, I'm not spending all this money anymore. I'm not getting high on these drugs. Why would I spend this money if it's not working for me anymore? This is a system of totality that something can work.
So you guys came up with the bridge device?
This is the device that actually, the technology with this started a few years ago. I brought this to Angelo's attention. This was something that they started for pain relief because it affects the 5th, 7th, 9th, and 10th cranial nerves, okay? So what it does is it affects those areas in the brain with electric stimulation. And people who, for instance, when they started this technology out, and now it's a little different because it's different types of electrical stimulation they're sending. But they had people with diabetic neuropathy, people with arthritis. What it would do, it would increase, affecting the 5th, 7th, 9th, and 10th cranial nerves, increase vascular flow. It would affect those nerves, increase blood flow, which brought all the things that are anti-inflammatory, what we call cytokines, that fought off the inflammation that you have. So the pain would go away.
That was how many years ago?
That had to be, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago.
That was primarily developed as a pain relief.
As a pain relief, and doctors would use it.
Non-narcotic.
Non-narcotic. They would do it post-operatively on patients to help relieve the pain.
Still available.
Still does it. It can still use this device for pain, for these type of things, but it blocked those areas in the brain because it was so close to the central nervous system that it affected those nerves. So the trigeminal nerve and the facial nerve and the glossary and the vagus nerve, it would affect those things, those areas in your brain, and affect those to allow different modalities of delivery of things in your body that could help you fight pain and inflammation. And they worked tremendously. And then after they saw that worked, they said, listen, people who were having addiction problems, we're telling them they were doing better. So they adjusted the area, the electrical stimulation, and said, now, if we're affecting those areas of the brain, let's affect this area. And this is how it developed, and this is how it worked. And I brought it to Angelo's attention several years ago. I said, this is something that's unique. At the time, Neil Capretto, I brought it to Neil up there.
Yeah, just to give you a little historical background to help our guy with the video here. My understanding is the company that owns it is from Indiana, okay, and we've met with them several times. Our understanding is that it started in Europe, and it was out there years ago in Europe. Some people have called it, and the doctors hate when I say this, but some people have erroneously called it like an electronic acupuncture of some sort. It's subcutaneous. I'm starting to learn, right?
It goes right underneath the skin.
So it does pinch you a little bit.
There's 3 little leads that are just a little needle that goes right underneath the skin. So basically, you put a light there, you see where the blood vessels are, you put it underneath the skin. Very few, you make sure people doesn't have a rash or any type of, problem there. You want to be careful with people who might have, stimulators in their heart and stuff to do that.
You can pick up Sirius Radio too, I think, right?
Yeah.
I'm teasing.
No, and when Neil Capretto, God bless him, he was a wonderful guy, ran, Gateway Health up here. I told Neil about this. I used to tease him all the time. I said, Neil, you got a rehab center here. Can I put a sign in your yard that says stay off the grass? You know what I mean? And, you know, he used to laugh. And I said, this is something that could revolutionize where your people are right now. So it takes 10 minutes, 15 minutes to put it on at most.
Now, going back to the historical background of it, apparently it was in Europe. It was, again, goes back to the advertising schemes, the way, generally speaking, doctors get CMEs. Is that what they call it? Like you're getting CLEs. But generally speaking, doctor training in these areas, we have doctors, most doctors that are our friends, and I'm surprised. I can't wait to throw this at them. One of our doctors in our group sees 40 patients a day. That's not unusual, right?
No.
Okay. How would you like to see 40 clients a day? So that's about 7 minutes or something, right? So they don't have time, and the pharmaceutical advertising, which becomes an educational thing for new things, is throwing a bunch of pens and samples on the doctor's desk and leaving, okay? And so we believe, we don't know, we believe that the lack of training on the P-stem, is that what they called it?
There were different.
then?
P-stem was the first thing that started, and they had some trouble, you know, with some of those things with P-stem, with Medicare covering it and all these type of things. We've used these type of devices for years. TENS units, you know, people, they do it for a spinal surgery where they can. So there are a number of different things that we have used throughout the years, and this is
Okay.
how this developed.
I just want to interrupt you 1 second to make sure I go develop this
Why
point.
are we hearing about this?
Okay, but I'm just telling you,
This is
that's
something-
why we're not hearing about it.
Right.
Because really, sometimes us as professionals are too busy. There's 3 professions, major professions in every community: the educators, the lawyers, and the doctors. Okay? And I'm telling you that these things are hidden in plain sight. We are bombarded through the internet with so much stuff that this stuff's out there. It's been out there. October 11th, 2010, Vivitrol was approved by the FDA. The blockade. That's how old this is. And some of you probably have never heard of it. The bridge was cleared by the FDA. It's a device. It's not approved. It's cleared. It was cleared about 10 months ago. And again, those things just aren't common knowledge. So at the very least, if you see the advertising on the cable channels, I don't want to reveal where I'm coming from, but I do watch Fox a lot. And the medical commercials are the same as on CNN, I think. And you notice there, they will tell you, ask your doctor. Ask your doctor. Well, guess what? That's an effective way to learn. Ask your doctor whether these 3 guys up here standing in front of the room had any concept of reality and knew what they were talking about. That's part of who we are. We have an outreach program. We don't only just provide the treatment, we actually do this, CLEs, we do events in public. We're doing something in Butler. We're doing an event in the Catholic Church May 11th, a free breakfast up in Newcastle. And then we're going to Harrisburg on June 11th. The website is vrnnational.com, vrnnational.com. But we also have a website, it's called Summits Coalition. I'll give you all that stuff later when you leave. But the most important thing is, part of what we're trying to do too is make people aware so that they will ask their doctors and challenge their doctors and make your own decision. We're not salesmen. I'm an attorney. He's a doctor. He's a doctor. We're here just telling you things that maybe would help you learn.
See, the problem with the medical community, again, when Angela started this very nice discussion earlier, he talked about the 4 stages of learning. The first one is unconsciously incompetent, where you don't know what you don't know. Most doctors out there, when it comes to this, are unconsciously incompetent. They don't know what they don't know. The reason they don't know is, first of all, they never heard about it. Second of all, if they did, they wouldn't believe in it. And third of all, it's not part of their regular practice, because all they're used to doing is getting the patient come in, take their blood pressure, get the copay, and out the door, and another 40 patients comes in. That's the problem. And so the 3 of us that have something in common is we are open. We're very open-minded people. We've identified ourselves that way, and because we're so open, this is where we're at today with VRN. This is not on trial, guys. This is not an experiment. We've been working on this. I mean, he's been working on this for 15, 17, 18 years. He's been with Angela quite a few times. I've been around for about 2 or 3 years. But because we became knowledgeable, and now we know what we do know, and we need to get it out to the word to the masses of the people of the United States. This is the worst thing that's ever happened to our country is what we're talking about right now.
Yeah. And what you see is, I mean, many doctors are like anybody else. They know what works in their practice. I'm going to do this. I'm not going to change. I'm not going to do this. When we went through medical school, none of this stuff was there. We never knew about it. We never trained about it. You know, if you do a certain type of medicine right now, it's like, I'm comfortable with what I have. I don't need to do this. They don't know about it. Sometimes they don't want to know about it until they understand what it can do. And that's what we're out there doing right now, is telling these people, there's things out there that you don't know about that really can change people's lives. Hey, you should listen to what we're talking about.
And there is some kind of an industry issue too. When I made that appointment and sat in that doctor's office years ago, 18, okay? Today, if you walk from his office directly to Newcastle and up to Erie, you will walk across the threshold of 3 addiction physicians' doctors' offices. 3. It's an industry that doesn't exist. Okay? Most people would never want to be in this industry. Well, think about it. There's references to alcoholism and opiate addiction in the Proverbs of the Bible. Okay? Not until 1959 had we had the first what we call MAT, medicinal assistance treatment. Not until then did we have anything but talk therapy. Now, this is a little experiment with Dante's microphone here on talk therapy. Talk therapy had to compete with all of that chemistry that's going on. And of course, talk therapy, some brilliant things were said, probably never heard or retained. So back in 1959, we have the emergence of antabuse. Anybody ever hear of antabuse? Antabuse gets you sicker than heck if you drink alcohol. My understanding, I'm slaughtering it, I'm sure, is that it was invented in Akron, and it was by accident. Some rubber workers were going to a bar and they would get violently ill when they would drink after leaving the rubber plant or whatever. It had something to do with what was going. So from that evolved a medication that makes the body think it's been poisoned by formaldehyde. And the body immediately goes into dry heaves. Okay? So, but it was a medicinal intervention, probably the first one. 1959. I was 9, if you're doing the math. Okay. You were 10.
I was 9.
He's older than I am.
I graduated a year before.
He was 10.
No, I just turned 69 like you. I'm only 3 weeks older than you.
All right. Anyway, I'll yield for the camera's sake.
And I'm 20 years younger than these guys.
Anyway,
He's had a lot of plastic surgery.
1959. Okay.
I used to be as tall as him until he started working on me.
Good one. Excellent. See how we're kind of like a comedy crew, too. Okay, 1959. Let's get back to work here. 1959. I already told you about the buprenorphine. It's opium, okay? It goes into your body with a little strip or a tablet, okay? And it can be ingested slowly, right, docs? So it'll cut the cravings off because you got your fix, okay? But it's not going to do much for your treatment. You're not going to get high, although there are people who get high. There are stories in which people come out of a methadone clinic and sell it, saliva and all, on the street. Yeah. They only give it out once a day. The long lines at the methadone clinics, your body starts to react in a 24-hour cycle, many times less than 24. So that's the first thing they do is go line up. Okay. So the next medicinal intervention, the only one, total abstinence, was the naltrexone. It was in a tablet form called Revia, and then it evolved into the injectable blockade. Dr. Woolhandler and I go all the way back to that first Butler case, and that was Revia back then. And it only lasted for 24 hours. You can get an implant of naltrexone under your skin, which they say will last 2 years or so. Okay, so, but the naltrexone is some kind of a magical non-narcotic total abstinence medicinal intervention, the first one of its kind, okay? And I don't know, tomorrow something else might be invented, but whatever will be invented, we will advocate using it to put that firewall around the male or female and reignite that candle inside of him and empower that person. World War II was almost lost, right? When England was this close to capitulating. When America got in the war, it was over immediately. America was the key ally. The key ally is the addict. The key ally is the alcoholic. Not until you empower that person to join the war are you going to have a real war on substance abuse. So it's all about empowerment. You guys who criticize government, we don't like to send billions of dollars overseas. I don't mind sending billions of dollars overseas if you use it to teach somebody how to cultivate an area and plant a crop and sustain themselves. So these billions of tax dollars should be aimed at non-narcotic activities that empower the person to join the fight, get off your back end and do something. Man up, woman up, but be who you were designed to be, a leader. And some of us, I'm sorry to preach at you, but.
You know, Angela likes this thing because I use it, when I do speaking and stuff sometimes. People always ask me in medicine and in surgery, et cetera, what's the future? Well, there's no way to predict the future. The only way to predict the future of what's going to happen with this is to create it. And that's what we've done. We've put together a program that hopefully can create a future for people who never thought they had a future. That's the important thing to this, like this. I mean, if you can do something in your life that can change other people's lives, that's what's important. And we think we've got a program together, both counseling, both with taking away withdrawal, both with taking away the opioid addictions, that can change so many people's lives. I mean, nothing gives you a better feeling than that. Nothing in the world gives you a better feeling than doing that. And I think we've got a program together now, all-encompassing, that nobody's looked at, that be able to stop the withdrawal symptoms, get you over that hump, counsel you, see why it started in the first place, and hopefully get you off the addiction clinic.
Hey, Doc, can you pass the microphone to Joe? One time, I think there was one point we may have neglected. The Vivitrol, Doc, was released, FDA approved, October 10th, 2011.
Right.
However, you couldn't take the Vivitrol unless you were completely clean for 7 to 10 days.
Right.
That's an important topic that I'm not so
Right.
sure we developed.
Right.
Can you develop that and how the bridge now became the bacon and eggs?
Well, that's what we talked about, why the
But I
toxicology.
want to make sure that he gets that.
Why the toxicology screening is important to be off that. Go ahead.
So you have to be clean to get Vivitrol. So how do you get clean? Well, you're put in jail, you're put in a hospital, you're put in a gateway, and you got to suffer through the ups and downs of going through detox yourself. This program we have is a non-hospital program. They don't have to go to a hospital. They can do this from their home. Think about the savings that the government's going to have by not having to pay X amount of bucks for 6 months while they're in some in-hospital situation or gateway or something like that. The device, the bridge, is a cover. It'll help them get through that the first 5 days, and then we start them on the Vivitrol. This is a home-based medical treatment plan, total assisted medical abstinence treatment of getting them off opioids and alcohol. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, outpatient.
Outpatient, right.
And again, the Vivitrol was very breathtaking, but it had startling slow results because people couldn't detox.
Right.
So when the bridge came along, it became the natural combination of the bacon and eggs. If you think about playing baseball and you hit the ball, you don't run over top of the pitcher's mound to go to second. You have to go to first. Okay? So you can't go to second until you go to first base, which is the detox. And that's been, so when you connected the both of them, that's where it started to work. And that's where Jim talks about and Joe talks about the three-legged footstool, and that's the counseling. I respectfully submit that if a person only did the bridge, that's bad, right? If a person only did the blockade, that's probably bad too, for two reasons. You can't get it until you're clean, and two, if you think it's a miracle shot, you're going to relapse because you've had that experience when you take all your cold medication and you say, I've used half the prescription, I feel great. What do? You don't take the rest of the medication. You don't convalesce properly, and you relapse. Okay? So the counseling, the bridge, the blockade, and the counseling is the trilogy.
Yeah, so when I told my son about this, the gentleman I talked about earlier, who today is incredibly successful, when I presented this to him, he said, "You kidding me?" He's laughing. Well, first of all, he's laughing at me because I'm an oral surgeon. What do I know about this stuff? You know, he's the patient. He was the client. He went through this. Vivitrol is not going to work. So I kept hitting him. I said, "Stephen, what about this? What about this device? What about this?" He goes, "Oh." He said, "I wish I would have had that device. Just think about it. I wouldn't have had to go to Gateway a couple of times. I wish I had that device." So see, this puts the whole program together of empowerment. Empowerment is our big word here. We want to empower people to get the word out. We want to empower opiate people, alcoholics to be able to take care of themselves. I mean, this is huge, guys. I mean, I get excited when I think about this, more so than anything else. I wake up every single day thinking, how many people, millions of people, millions, in the United States alone, are we going to be able to help with the clinics we're going to set up? I mean, does that make sense?
You know, if we all, you know, we want to end this now pretty soon. We've talked about this in depth, and we're just reiterating some points. But it's a hope. It's a hope for these patients, which they had never had for a long, long time in their lives. And that's the great thing. It's a chance. It's a hope. Is it going to work on everybody? Probably not. But is it going to work on a majority of people? Absolutely. Is it going to help their families? Yes. Is it going to make their life better? Yes. I mean, I tell you what, I mean, God, I can't even imagine being a father and losing a son to addiction and stuff, because I've had friends that have done that. I can't even imagine that. And if we can stop that progression of things going forward, we've made life changes. I mean, there's nothing else you'd be better in your life than doing this. Anybody have any questions on anything we've talked about or so? Well, thank you. I appreciate you listening to us and stuff like this. I just think we're on a mission here. We're all agreed on this mission. You know, I'm retired from my practice right now from doing surgeries anymore. This is something that I'm very dedicated to doing, and I think we're going to change a lot of lives.
For-profit corporation, 501c3, very compliant. Everything you heard was from people who are not in our nonprofit corporation. We actually were teaching this total abstinence, medicine assisted. We've had colleagues.
Continue, go ahead.
Okay. We basically have been preaching this style of treatment, and something funny happened. The projector there can do that if you want.
No, I just, is this okay like this?
Oh, sure.
Go ahead.
I got
Yes,
it.
got it.
Okay.
Good, go ahead.
I was hiding behind it, actually. Wish you wouldn't have done that. I got up early this morning. Looks like I combed my hair with a vacuum cleaner. Okay, you ready?
Yes.
Okay. We are a not-for-profit corporation. Very, very important. We aren't selling anything here. Everything we do, every information we have is given freely, okay? Now, what happened was we've been doing this for several years, is we actually had people sitting in the audience, one or two would come up to me invariably and say, that sounds really cool. I have a nephew. I have a son. I have a daughter. I have a this. I have a that. So it kept on coming up. And so what happened was we had doctors starting to say, I want to do this. I don't want to just hear you talk about it. I want to do it. So we said, wow. So we started licensing treatment centers. And the treatment centers are all verifiable recovery network. Now, verifiable is very important to us because throughout 15 years or so, and again, it goes back to who we are and how proud we should be of who we are. Do you have any idea? I'm sure you do, but I think you just don't think about it. I got a point to make. Let me give you a quiz. What's the most popular song that's ever earned royalties in America? The maximum amount of royalties. What song has made more royalties than any other song?
Happy birthday.
Thank you. That's something that most people don't think of. It's kind of neat because somebody will say the Beatles, somebody will say the Temptations. I'm a 60s guy, you know, and I saw the Temptations, the real Temptations. But anyway, but happy birthday. Now, what's my point? My point is you knew that. You just didn't think about it, okay? So what we're talking about is what you already know. We as lawyers sometimes maybe, I don't know, maybe it's because we're just constantly having data in client files and stuff in our head. But lawyers are so important. So I can tell you my personal experience, which I think would bring this point home. I remember being in front of a judge, and I talk about Mike Zunder in the back there in Butler County, and he knows exactly who the DA was and who the judge was, and we all know that, and he even probably knows a little bit about the case. But I can remember being in Meadville. I can remember having and criminal defendants, we still have some defense attorneys in here. It's plea day or sentence day. And they have these criminal courts as kind of like, by the way, it's a great way to make a living if you don't want to do a lot of paperwork, because the DA, the court administrator, and the judge does most of it, right? When you have civil cases and you're filing, you have to do discovery and all that stuff like that, certify it ready for trial, motions for summary judgment. They do all that stuff. You just have to show up, right, counselor? You're a criminal lawyer, right?
Yes.
All you have to do is show up. I mean, you have to be prepared, obviously. But you don't have, there's a lot of administration that's going on in the civil side that we don't have. So one of the things they have, though, is they have this thing where you're being pled. And we're standing there, and it's my turn. There's 30 guys behind me. And I got a client, and I'm trying to explain to the judge non-narcotic injectable blockades and all these things that are going to work. He interrupted. He said, what do I need to hear any of this stuff for? You know, who wants to be embarrassed in front of 50 lawyers, right? I think one of the strengths I have is that I don't care. You can embarrass me. I embarrass myself most often, so I'm okay. I'm used to it. I'm low maintenance. But that's what happened in the beginning. But as we kept on going further, you know, we started talking and seeing about sentence advocacy. Those of you who do criminal law should pay very serious attention to the ethical rule on diligent representation of a client and really reevaluate what you do to prepare and participate in sentencing. It's a whole science all by itself. I can tell you, I didn't do it many times until I started teaching it. I didn't, as a prosecutor, what happens is normally the court will come out, the person has pled guilty or the person has been found guilty, and they have a sentencing procedure. One of the things they have is called a pre-sentence report. The pre-sentence report is a report to help the judge on how to sentence the person. Now, we have sentencing guidelines and things like that, which have been really weird around the years. So the pre-sentence report basically is the adult probation, and it's all part of their establishment. Now, you can say that adult probation isn't an arm of the district attorney or isn't an arm of the judge and is something else, but they're all in that same courthouse infrastructure. They'll have like a cut and paste report of what the defendant said and everything, and the judge reads that, and usually if you took a camera from behind the bench, you would see the defense attorney standing here, his client to his left, the district attorney standing next to the defense attorney, and maybe adult probation or the policeman or nobody standing next to the DA. And all of them are just shifting their weight back and forth between themselves, watching the judge read the pre-sentence report. And it's kind of like that movie Christmas Vacation. Do you remember the movie Christmas Vacation before? No, it was Planes and Trains. Planes and Trains, when Steve Martin wanted to catch the plane to get home, and the guy was leaning back, and he'd lean up, and he'd lean back, and lean up, and he wants to catch that plane, and he'd go like he was going to say something he didn't. I'm telling you, that's what happens in sentencing. It's bizarre. And you're sitting there, and then the judge says what happens, and your client goes like this, and you go like this. That's not how you advocate for a client, okay? You're supposed to be prepared. So this assessment they were talking about is something that you would want to add into the pre-sentence report. Back to my original point, though. My original point was this. In 18 years, in 32 counties, maybe 37, I'm not sure. I know multiple states, and I know I was involved in at least 2 countries. Almost had to wear a powdered wig in Calgary. They still, back then, it was 8 years ago, they still do powdered wigs back then. Anyway, so every time I went there, I had some aggressive prosecutor pushing back at me. Put him in jail, put him in jail, tough on crime. Okay, again, let's go back to Loeffler, right? By the way, I have a handout if anybody wants the actual site for Loeffler. So if you want a handout for Loeffler, aside from the book, it's in the book though, but if you want a handout for Loeffler, I have one on conflicts of law. But anyway, on my conflicts of law thing, in their mind, coming from their side, they're, again, going back to old movies, Miracle on 34th Street. Remember when the newspaper would spin in his head and come up to his judge says there's no such thing as Santa Claus. Well, the DA is thinking about this headline, judge lets a person on substance abuse out without jail time. He crosses over a center line and kills a family of 5. Okay? See, that's where they're coming from. The judge has a legal duty to protect society. Okay? So we know that he has a duty to protect society, and we know the district attorney has to do that. So that constant pushback. This is my keys coming, by the way. Can we stop the... Okay, so that pushback in open court, we call that, poets have called that the anvil of litigation. That's an amazing process. I could see it in our own program. Dante Ludovici here, who's part of the Cinematographers Guild, I mean, we're talking a very prestigious producer here. He's been with me for several of these years, and you could see it evolving. You could see us changing. And every time we got something we couldn't fix, we responded to it. And it actually got better. So what I'm saying is one of the most important contributions a lawyer has, no matter what class you're in or whatever you do, you have an amazing opportunity to effectuate change in law. I don't want to steal some of our next class, but we'll talk about what is a meritorious and what is not a meritorious defense. But you are all that person has. Okay? And it's important. Again, I'm going to take one of my side lights here to let me put in these little personal stories once in a while, so I can make it move a little bit faster. But I had a... no, I'm going to save it for the next class. So in that pushback, we have evolved. So we're a nonprofit corporation. And when we had people who wanted to set it up, we created a license. And the license gives those verifiable, see? Now that recovery was being pushed back all the time by the prosecutor, so we had to have something that was real. You can go into court all day long and you can say there's people in drug treatment, and I can tell you right now, most people won't even begin to listen to us because all they know is nobody ever succeeds. And they have that mindset, and maybe you have that mindset, but I had bars in facing my client that I had to prove that this one worked. So we thought the first most important letter, wow, what happened there? My computer. It's plugged in. I wonder if I must have hit something. Okay. Anyway, so what's my password? There we go. Okay, so we had to have something that was evidence-based and it was verifiable recovery. Now again, going back to the talk therapy, that's not going to work. No judge is going to believe that. Going back to the methadone and Suboxone narcotic treatment, the judge isn't going to buy into that. So the naltrexone and having somebody who's been on it for several months was now approaching something that a judge could take a chance with. So that every one of these people who want to do what we're teaching, they have to buy a license and they have to say that that's one of the things they do. Number 2, it's a recovery. And number 3, it's a network, so that we have basically 5 or 6 different types of sites. One would be, for example, a kiosk site where you'd see something in a dentist's office with a panel and you sign up. The other one would be maybe some kind of a location like Bonita Springs in Florida, Altoona, Newcastle, Pennsylvania, and whatever, and somebody else might be some other variation. Or you don't have to be a variation at all, you can just buy the book or whatever. Or have the book given to you, again, because we're a nonprofit, okay? So it's very important for you to know that this whole presentation has been presented to you by SACS, okay? So what SACS stands for? What the heck does the name mean? There's a lot in that name. Number 1, it's substance abuse, okay? Which means it's not just opiates, it's not just alcohol. Oh, it's not just alcohol, it's not just opiates, it's substance abuse. Okay? And the middle letter here, it's a coalition. Professionals are professionals. If you want to work together with somebody on a file, and we'll get into that in the next class, You are collaborating. Okay? So when you collaborate, no professional in any arrangement, including your own little partnerships, and we'll talk about that next class, should ever sacrifice their independent judgment on what that client, patient needs to the sake of some team objective. Now, sometimes the team objective is the same as the individual objective, and that's a good thing. But it's a coalition. It's people who work together. That doesn't mean they're partners. That doesn't mean they're anything more than independent professionals. The coalition is exactly that. It's a coalition. It's a group of people who are not committed to each other. They're committed to only their patients. Law firm. Is there any the law firm people in here? Who in here works for a law firm with maybe 50 lawyers or more? And who do you work for? Reed Smith. Big firm. Okay, we're talking about the big guys, right? That's Hollywood. Okay. Now, how many attorneys they have? Okay. Now, every you guys get paid with paychecks, right?
Right.
And it happens every what? 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Okay. And every 2 weeks, no matter what, you're going to count on that paycheck coming, and that's a good thing. And you had to be very, very attractive as a candidate and an attorney to be hired by that, and they're very, very good. But what I'm saying is sometimes people don't have that ability to put that group together like that, to have that overhead and that fixed overhead. So by having a coalition like that, you can put together doctors and lawyers who otherwise wouldn't be able to just show up every Friday and pay each other, okay? So that coalition, to me, is very much akin to a wall-less law firm, or a wall-less clinic, or a wall-less legal medical clinic, okay? So now, collaboration sounds like really cool. Boy, that guy's pretty smart. I can't believe he thought of that. He doesn't sound like he's all that bright. How did he think of that? Well, coalition is easier said than done. 2 heads are better than 1. Math is unassailable. 12 heads should be better than 2. But try working with 12 sets of egos, 12 competing licenses, 12 different geographic locations. It starts to become chaos. Okay? So, another way to describe it. You're an oboe player. You're a flute player. You're a cello player. You look like you would have a viola. I have somebody in the back looks like it would be kettle drums. Okay? If we put all of you on stage and you are gifted musicians who've been playing since you were 7, Joshua Bell. Remind me to tell them about Joshua Bell. Anybody hear of Joshua Bell? Wow, I got to tell you about Joshua Bell. Dante, remind me, we were into the orchestra discussion, and I'm going to go to Joshua Bell on my turn signal. Now, my wife will tell a story. She never puts a turn signal on, so she takes off and goes somewhere else, and I don't know she even left the highway. If she's at the base of an oak tree, and the goal was to get to the top branch to tell that story, she will trace every twig until she gets to the top of that tree. Okay, so I have those tendencies too. I'm sorry. So, Joshua Bell. Joshua Bell is a violinist. Does that start to ring a bell yet? Okay, a concert violinist. Been playing since he was 7, from what I understand. He has a Stradivarius that I guess he takes to the bathroom with him. He never is separated from that Stradivarius, $3 million violin. He went and he played down in Washington suburbs at a Subway. And he made, if you calculated what he makes per seat in the Holiday Bowl over in California, he makes like about, $12,000 an hour, something like that. So Joshua Bell played in the Subway for free, and as a homeless person, he made $7. People tossed that into a hat. So my concept is, out of context, maybe even what we're telling you now, sometimes people don't get it. They don't respect it. But again, go back to my analogy now, the concert violinist. A bunch of you are Joshua Bell quality musicians. Each of you have a different musician. Each of you show up on a stage, and each of you start playing off of a piece of sheet music that is not the same. It'll be total noise. I don't care how talented you are. It'll be very revolting. However, when we get you on the same sheet music and we have somebody to direct the activities of these people through this wall-less infrastructure, technology now is amazing. You can't believe what we do. Now we have the makings of maybe not a gigantic brick and mortar facility where people can work together to a team result. Okay? And the coalition is, quite frankly, one of the things we do. We recruit them, like-minded people. we orient them, we train them, we support them, and then we all work together. So that's kind of how the concept of the coalition, that's a very important letter. The other letter in that is summit, okay? Now, summit is very important to us too. The summit means that when we assemble this team, they are not just any team. They are first and foremost independent, okay? Very important. I just already explained that to you. Number two, they are neutral. You heard the two doctors up here talk about a modality. You heard them talk about maybe a facility. The coalition is neutral. It will never favor a particular profession, professional, entity, modality, anything. The coalition is always neutral, and that's when they are assembled in any form, it is a summit. Just like a summit would be the highest meeting possible in the country on economics, maybe in the world, the developing countries in the world or something like that. G2 summit, something like that. So the summit is assembling these neutral people, and our goal is to always get the best. Our goal is to always find the best. And some of the people we have in our advisory board are pretty prestigious, and I never miss an opportunity. Right down the highway here, for those of you who live nearby, was one of the most gifted, precious, wonderful human beings I ever knew in my life, Neil Capretta, God rest his soul. Neil Capretta was 62 years old, chief of staff at Gateway. He was just a wonderful man. He might even be on some of our literature. And Neil was on our advisory board. He got this really... He called me one day, and he was supposed to do a presentation for us, remember, in Greenville High School, I think it was, and he said, I can't be there. No, it was the one before. It was Newcastle High School. He showed up at Greenville, and he said, I can't be there. Angela, I went to the hospital. I had stomach pains, and it was around Easter time, and next thing he knew, he had this small type of small cell cancer or something like that. And it was amazing. He came to Greenville the following spring, and he looked like $1 million. And then 2 months later, he had passed away from that disease. So we want to attract only the best. And so if somebody tomorrow invents something better than Vivitrol, I'm not a Vivitrol salesman. I don't get paid for selling Vivitrol. I don't sell bridges. I don't sell anything. We're just always giving voice and hopefully an audience to people who otherwise on their own couldn't get a voice. We have a gifted speaker we met in Florida, and I can tell you right now, he struggles with getting a crowd. You know, you're a professional. It's putting people in the room that's the hardest part. Anybody can stand up here with a PowerPoint and make anything sound good. It's getting people to show up and listen to it and pay attention to it and provide something good. So we decided to have somebody like Dante Ludovisi here, a member of the Guild, which is huge. The Cinematographers Guild is very prestigious, and I know you don't want to say that about yourself, but I've known him forever. He's a gifted, you can't believe how he will edit this tape. So we knew from day one that if we were ever going to be effective, we needed to present, and we needed to present in an engaging way. So part of the coalition and the Summit Association is to have somebody of his professional stature, and we're really lucky to have him. And I'll say publicly on this tape that I've been a better person having known him. He is a very fine person in addition to a gifted professional. So we have the presenters, we have the clinicians, we have the doctors, we have the addiction physicians, we have trial attorneys. Alexander Lindsay teaches trial tactics at the University of Pittsburgh. He's a wonderful lawyer, but he's a wonderful person. But it's so much fun. One of the things we have that's really fun is hanging out together with people who have fun. We know how to work hard, but we also know how to have fun too and make it kind of interesting. So all of that said, that's the coalition, and it is incorporated, and it is neutral, not for profit, and it licenses VRN facilities. So that if something we say makes sense to you, you can now send Billy or Billy Bob or Johnny or your niece to somewhere to get some kind of a treatment. So we've come full circle, and we're kind of proud of that. What's been interesting is we've been doing less presenting because we've been on the road now talking about the last year. That's all we've done. Bonita Springs, Florida, Chandler, Arizona, Greensburg, PA, Altoona, PA, Newcastle, PA, and I think Detroit is next in our crosshairs.
Utah.
And Utah from Dr. Barber. Yeah, I forgot about some of those people. But So if you go back to a person who keeps an inflatable podium in the trunk of their car, I'm having fun. And I'm letting you fill in some CLE classes along the way. So now, most important part is that if you decide as a person, not even as a lawyer or a professional, if you decide anything that makes sense here, this is our social media. These are our contacts right here. You guys being professionals and whatnot, we would love to have you give your opinion, and we'd throw it out there on Twitter through our professional networking here. And again, just so you know, we have had a huge debate in our group here. We keep on debating, who are we? What the hell are we? If we didn't say total abstinence, if we didn't say that, TA, total abstinence, we would be buried even in search engines, for example. If I put down recovery, I guarantee you there'll be 1 trillion hits that come up. But I don't think you can find anybody under total abstinence. So we know that that means nothing to you. My partners, and my members of the coalition, we argue about this all the time. I have not found a way to say it any shorter than total abstinence. Total abstinence is total abstinence. People of all walks of life understand that if I am abstinent sexually, I am totally abstinent. And you know what that means, okay? So I believe that people understand total abstinence. In the medical community, it is very well known, total abstinence. You cannot be a Suboxone clinic, you cannot be a methadone clinic and say you're a total abstinence. You can't. The two are inconsistent. So we know there's people in our business that say, personal injury only. We limit our practice to personal injury. I thought that was the most insane thing I ever saw. I have a friend in our town. His name is, I'll say his name, Dallas Hartman. He's a very successful lawyer. And I thought he was insane when he said that's all we do. But guess what? I mean, it went off the charts. It worked for him. So, you know, we're okay with not doing anything except total abstinence. Now, the MAT is important too, because medicine-assisted treatment. Now let's go back to the little historical view I gave you earlier. Medicine-assisted treatment didn't exist until 1959. So if you say you're a treatment center and you don't let people know that you're at a MAT center, they're not going to know that you are a medicine-assisted treatment. Now we know that we have methadone, we know we have antabuse, we know we have Vivitrol, we know you have the implant, you know you have Revio and whatnot. They're all in the family of medicine-assisted treatment. But if you weren't identified as a medicine-assisted treatment, you probably wouldn't have any kind of success getting a hit on the internet either. And we want to make sure that these things are non-negotiable. So although we are MAT, so is Suboxone, so is methadone, so is antabuse, we are total abstinence MAT, which is significantly different. So again, you have to bear with us on these little words, as someday we keep struggling on this. We spell it out now, so it makes a little more sense. This is my email address. Once upon a time, I had a different email address, but I thought it made sense to just use my name, esq@gmail.com. So we're always looking for people to become friends. So if you became a friend and just sent me an email once in a while, say, hey, I really thought that sucked. You shouldn't do that. I'm okay with that. I can handle bad news. I'm low maintenance. Anyway, or I think it should be better. Please. We're always looking to make new friends here. And these are some of the websites that have evolved over the years, in 15 years. We really have so much work we would have to do if we dismantled them all. So to be on the safe side, we're keeping them all in that contact, okay? All right. So that's who we are and the limitations. I have a couple things here that I want to bring home in a visual point. Hopefully I got them right. Oh, love it. Okay, remember we talked about 3 things, not one thing. Well, we know there are people out there who actually do the bridge, and that's all they do. We have a very gifted doctor over in St. Louis, and I think it's like $3,500 or something like that. But what do we know about the bridge? Hopefully, what have you remembered from earlier from the doctors? We know that if you put that device on, you will, by the way, a little bit of a correction here, it will not detox you in 10 minutes, okay? I'm not a doctor, and I forgot to interrupt them. I was being rude as it was. But it won't detox you in 10 minutes. What it'll do is separate you from the symptoms of detox and from the pain of detox. I've witnessed it. A COW score is your objective measurement of withdrawal. You may have somebody in your family you're suspecting, and you can tell some of the COW scores, you may see it yourself. Agitated, twitching, nervous, starting to sweat and whatnot, and it keeps getting worse, okay? That's somebody who has gone beyond usually the 24-hour cycle, and hasn't had more morphine, more opium, more whatever, okay? So the bridge actually will take the pain away. It will not detox you. Your body needs to metabolize, and I'm not a doctor, remember that, but I've heard them talk. It'll metabolize the opiates, and it'll probably take about 5 days. It's been reported that if you're on methadone, it might take 2 bridges to do that. It might take you more than 5 days to metabolize that opiate out of your system. Now, why is that important? Because the Vivitrol, you can't take the Vivitrol unless you're clean. Again, I'm not a doctor, but I am going to tell you what happens. I've been involved in this for many years. If you took Vivitrol or naltrexone and you were not clean, your body would be triggered into withdrawal. And again, the fear of an addict is the withdrawal. So the reason why this blockade, which made so much sense, one of the reasons, it was still progressing slowly as being knowledge, people knowing about it, is because you had to be clean before you could even take it. So we see that just like an airplane having 3 sets of landing gear here, I don't think you want to be on that plane. Now the comment to the rule says, in the middle, and I'm just going to read it to you so you don't have to try to find it online. Perhaps the most fundamental skill consists of determining what kind of legal problems a situation may involve, comma, a skill that necessarily transcends any particular specialized knowledge. Now that's right in the comments. There is nobody ever going to say that you're not competent if you're focusing on a solution like we're talking to you about the underlying problem. And quite frankly, you now would never be able to say, I didn't know about that. I didn't hear about that. Maybe I just exposed you to suit or something like that. But if somebody comes to you repeatedly with an employment problem, with a criminal law problem, with a domestic problem, and substance abuse is draped all over it, I think it's important for you to take advantage of what you know, and that's exactly what that talks about. Now, if you want to see that as a threat, I don't think you should. I think you should see it as an opportunity to be better than your competition, better than the guy down the street that has a picture in the phone book with handcuffs, or something like that, or come to me and I'll make sure your spouse never eats again or something, for a divorce case or something. We So anyway, and going on to the other comments, I'm going to continue on here. The comment section on 1.1, if you want to talk about, our next class will be on fees, and fees relate to, the skill you had, the knowledge you had, and your fee should be structured in form of that. Okay, so now that's 1.1. My most favorite rule, though, for you guys that are in criminal law is Rule .570 of criminal procedure. I'm going to step back again. I know we talked about this, but I'm going to retrace my steps just so you guys get this and I make sure that I cover the material. When a person is accused of doing something in our democracy, it starts with an information or a citation or something like that. And you'll get it certified mail, or the police will knock on your door, or maybe a grand jury indictment. But that's how it all begins. From the time it begins there, then you are preliminarily at a magistrate arraigned, in which you're told what you did. At the preliminary arraignment, then you basically are also determined whether or not you are a danger to society or a danger to flee. And the court will basically then talk about bond at that time. So it's traumatic enough to be accused of doing something wrong, getting a certified letter. It's double traumatic if somebody knocks on your door and picks you up. And we just know, we had that famous case. Was there that case of that guy who was in politics or something about, 2 months ago? They went to his house with all kind of SWAT team and got him out and whatnot. What was that? Whose follows that stuff? Who was that famous?
Paul Manafort.
Yeah, what's his name?
Paul Manafort and
Yeah.
Roger Stone, it happened to two of them.
Yeah, didn't they have about 35 policemen or something like that? And they had helicopters and SWAT gear and those shields and stuff. That's quite frankly, I think, again, I'm not politics. Politics aside, I think that's over the top, okay? You're not supposed to do that unless you have to. But again, it could be that if you're accused of a crime, or it could be just a certified letter saying that you were under the influence, suspected under the influence. Whatever it is, it starts there, then you have preliminary arraignment. Preliminary arraignment takes place and you're read formally what you did, and there's a bond issue that's going on. If it's not something that, if you're not fear of flying or if it's a dangerous crime, they'll give you, on your own recognizance, you'll leave and you'll be required to come back for a preliminary hearing. At the preliminary hearing, it is very true, and I'm going to repeat it again, if the policeman has a probable cause sheet, that's what it does. There's usually an information or something by an officer of the law that says what you did wrong. There might be some misspelled words in there or whatever, but it's basically, you know, just like you see on TV, a seek and type thing, and that becomes the information. Now, if that policeman doesn't show up at the magistrate, you could have the case dismissed. And I've had that happen before. If he does show up and it doesn't show up and you have it dismissed, they can refile again. They're allowed to do that. I've had that happen before. Most of the time they show up, and most of the time they have that with them, and most of the time they'll sit there and read the darn thing right into the record. Okay? The magistrate will bind the case over for trial. He's almost required by law, according to what the statute says, to believe that. Unless it be something so outrageous, the policeman says, I pulled over Mary Doe at 1100 hours, and sitting next to her was a purple dinosaur that was blowing smoke and flames out the window. That would not be bound over for trial. That's probably how crazy it would have to get to not be bound over for trial. So we already know that just because somebody accused you, you know that you're going to be arraigned. You know that you're going to be exposed for somebody claiming you shouldn't have bond and should go to jail waiting it out. You know that you're going to be bound over for trial. And then what's going to happen is you're going to wait about 3 months in the normal system, and then you're going to come up to the surface again in what's called call to trial. Call to trial didn't exist when I was a prosecutor several years ago. I call it DA babysitting. Call to trial is a way to make sure that nobody gets off on the speedy trial rule. There was a lot of people being released because they weren't being called to trial. Some people are DAs, they run for office and they don't know how to run an office, okay? And that became very dangerous because people were getting released. Some of them were dangerous criminals. So now they have call to trial in which, and they all seem to have it on Monday and Tuesday, which means somebody like me who has a multiple county practice, that's bad when you got 3 different counties and all want you to be there. So they make all the defendants and all the cases that are not done show up, and at that time they'll routinely grant continuances, and you keep on showing up every month until you get the case resolved or put it on the trial list. Now, what they do in Allegheny County, how many people here work in Allegheny County? Okay, criminal law at all?
He used to.
Okay, well, you know how crazy that is. Well, maybe you don't. My experience in criminal law in Allegheny County was that I have a case at a magistrate for preliminary arraignment. I go back for the preliminary hearing. It's bound over. I now wait until, they have these conferences now in Allegheny County. And, yeah, well, that's where I was getting at. It seemed to me that the first conference was the formal arraignment. Sometimes they would combine them. But, thank you, because arraignment, you heard that. Okay, was it the magistrate? Well, they tell you again now because the charges being bound over may not necessarily be the same that were on the original sheet. So they now formally arraign you. Now, formal arraignment is where they tell you formally what your charges are. Okay? So the formal arraignment's important less than what you're being told what you're accused of as to the clock that starts ticking at that time. Formal arraignment, I think this is the most neglected rule of criminal procedure there is, and I think it's very bad that it's neglected. Bill of particulars, right? What's that, 7 days or 10? 7 or 10? I'm not exactly sure.
7, yeah.
Okay, a bill of particulars, by the way, you can do it in a divorce too. A bill of particulars asks, what are you claiming we did? The divorce says indignities. What did I do that was an indignity? Okay? Well, we just had a case, and I'm not going to go into details because we're filming this, but we just had a case, and Dante, you're familiar with the case we're talking about up in Mercer County, where a person was alleged to have done something, and that action or inaction was stretched to say that it was an interference with the judicial process. It was an offense against a judicial administration. So it was, defendant did X, Y, Z, and X, Y, Z interfered with administration of justice. Now we know that if the thing said defendant ran a red light, that's pretty easy. But if you say the person did things that were personal in nature, I think a bill of particular would be very important to say, how does that offend the statute in administration of justice? Now, why would that be a good thing to do strategy-wise? Strategy-wise, because I can tell you, I was a prosecutor, if we have a bill of particulars and they come back with some detailed answer as to what you did and why it offended the statute, that's our whole defense is right there. You shouldn't be able to go into court and just allege all these things that sound pretty goofy and then throw the statute out there and let the jury make that connection, because that's not what a jury does. Juries are supposed to be triers of fact, not necessarily the reasoners of law. So to me, that's a very important thing, that you should file a bill of particulars. Now, if you're filing a bill of particulars just to be a pain in the backside, that's not good. And most often the defense attorney or the prosecutor is going to be ticked off, and then they're not going to want to give you a good plea bargain or something like that. So you do have to exercise some restraint. Aside from bill of particulars, the next deadline that's going to come up is discovery, and that's 10 days, right? And I always I have my secretaries automatically send a letter in asking for informal and formal discovery, because if something happens and I'm in trial someday and they walked into court with some evidence and I didn't ask them what they had, I can exclude that, and I better call my malpractice carrier if I didn't ask for it.
What we used to do is just go to the formal arraignment and go right to the DA's office and drop off the discovery.
Yeah, now I can tell you there's a little gimmick there too. As a prosecutor, the prosecutors, most of them, get it now that they don't want to let somebody have a solid defense based upon something they could or should have done. So prosecutors have this thing where they'll let, oh yeah, hi Joe, how's it going? Pretty good. They have a cup of coffee. It's usually, hey, you work with these guys. There's a camaraderie that works out. Yeah, sure, go ahead, take a look at the file. Again, my cousin Vinny. Remember my cousin Vinny when he thought he was so smart he went deer hunting with the prosecutor so he could get a peek at the file, okay? Well, that's discovery, but what I do is I'll bring a letter in anyway, and I will make them let me copy the file unless it's voluminous, and then they sign a letter saying that we agree that that's the total of what's in this file. Because I can tell you there could be one email or one letter that shows up in that file at trial that was not in there when you showed me your whole file. And I can't prove you showed me your whole file, but it's easy for me to prove that I copied everything and this is a letter signed by you that that's all that was in there. So I think you should go further than just letting them look at your file. That's
When they do it in Allegheny County, they send you the file.
just send everything to you.
Unless they used to.
Yeah. Anyway, so now that's not the problem. That's not where I'm going with this point, by the way. After we're past formal discovery, we only have 30 days to file a motion to suppress anything, pretrial omnibus motion. Now, I'm going to go back to you because you're knowledgeable. There's a way around that too, quite frankly. If we didn't file a motion for a pretrial omni, we could probably still file a habeas corpus sometime, right? And maybe a sufficiency thing. They'll let you get away with something because they know if they don't let you get away with that, defendant after he goes to jail is going to sue you for ineffective assistance of counsel, and they have to start all over again. So they're not going to hold you. But I still wouldn't count on that. I think that within 30 days of that formal arraignment, you should file something that's pretty broad so you could say you know. Most important, though, and that's where we're going with today's lesson, is Rule 570. Okay, 570 is a rule that, again, most people don't use. Okay, 570 says, at any time after the filing of an information, comma, upon motion, comma, or upon its own motion, the court may order the attorney for the Commonwealth and the defense attorney or pro se defendant to appear before it for a conference in open court, unless agreed by the defendant, which means it could be in chambers, to consider. And then it gives you like 6 things to consider. And the one that almost always fits, such, number 6, such other matters as may aid in the disposition of the proceedings. So defense prosecutors are notorious for following lockstep that cadence. Discovery mailed out, deadline, pre-trial conference, formal arraignment, notice to trial, right? And they tell you in Allegheny County, they'll basically have a whole bunch of juries sitting in courtrooms. And you'll sit down there, the way last time I was there, unless they changed it, they say, here's the plea. Take it or go pick a jury. What? And the client, by the way, they won't let you, rarely will they let you see the plea. Now this is wonderful for client confidence when you tell him that he has to go to prison tomorrow, or he has to run the risk of going to prison 6 days from now after the trial's over, and go to prison maybe in the state penitentiary because he chose to go to trial rather than take a plea. That's a hard speech for your client, right? And it's usually always in the hallway, and his mother is usually standing there, or somebody saying, "What? We were in your office 3 weeks ago. You didn't tell me it was only after 2 minutes to make this decision." And it is crazy, but it's, trust me, it's how they administer justice most often in criminal courts, right? So it seems to me that this 570 rule allows you to slow it down and get in front of a judge, because although the prosecutor will say take it or leave it, and rarely, sometimes you won't even get a prosecutor in Allegheny County. They'll send you some assistant or something, either the assistant or maybe even not even an attorney. And they'll say, this is the plea bargain. Do you accept it or not?
So I've never, well, I don't know you now, but I've always, assistant DAs are always the one.
And rarely do they have authority to go off that page, though.
Oh, no, they don't.
Or else they'll lie to you.
Whoever's the coroner there is will have to, if you try to come back with something that they might agree with, they have to go back to their boss and say, we accept it.
And they basically say, no, you need to let me know if this is acceptable, or you need to go pick a jury. And picking a jury is a huge, well, number one, you're going to lose a lot of money if you didn't get paid to go pick a jury and go to trial. So, again, we'll talk more about that in the next class, but the 570 motion allows you to get in front of a judge. And when you get a judge talking about, and you can mention some of these things and mention about the problem of the proof and the combine it. So if we take it all in total now, we're 2 attorneys. We're a 6th Amendment attorney, all those rights. And we're an 8th Amendment attorney. And the 8th Amendment attorney is the one that's saying, Your Honor, if you do what you're planning on doing, you're going to take this guy and put him in a state penitentiary and deprive him of a right to become healthy. Now, that's a pretty new argument, but it's gaining more and more traction with the advancements of science that we have here. Every DUI, just in case you don't know this, every DUI, a court has the discretion of keeping a DUI client in local confinement. Even if it's his 5th or 6th and it calls for a state penitentiary, the judge has the ability to keep him local. Now, why is it important to keep him local? Because if you keep him local, you have work release usually. You have not the trauma of going away to state penitentiary. You can get treatment. So all of those things need to be floating around in your head with this judicial conference here. And now, if you go back to your 6th Amendment thing, and you've done your job with a decent pretrial motion to dismiss something, or the probable cause may have had a problem, now you're bargaining with, you know, I just might win this issue, or it's certainly going to make the DA write a brief, and we're going to have a hearing on it. How about if we all put it all on the table now and come up with a better solution? And that goes back to that conflicts of law discussion we had. But there's no way you can do that if you don't work up the whole case before you ever go downtown.
That's the majority of times, when you would settle the matter or plea out, if you go in there with your pretrial motion to suppress, they look at it and they go, well, we have an issue here.
Right.
So, but they'll go, if you take this now and don't go through the suppression, so you can, a lot of times they'll give you like a better, way better deal. If you have a chance to win, they will settle that case.
And that is American Conflicts of Law, Robert Loeffler, Luther L. MacDonald, Governmental Interest Analysis. I mean, that's the little red book that's going to make you a better lawyer than anybody in town, is what you just did. That's what should put goosebumps all over your body, because that's lawyering. Anybody can go and read the statute to the court. That's how it works. And that involves several things. In the next class we'll talk about, it involves, first of all, not being a smart ass. I'll say it right on the tape here. I tell my clients, the first thing I do probably when I go to a hallway, I'm going to shake hands with the other attorney and say, how you doing? We can disagree without being disagreeable. I'm not going to be a smart aleck. You need a continuance or an extension, call me, send me a letter, because it should be in writing. I always agree to that. I never make it harder than it is. It's just not right to make it harder than it is. It's hard enough already. And I have this pet peeve, and my son thinks I'm going to have an Al Pacino moment any day because I'm getting crazier the older I get, more outraged every once in a while. I hate when a judge is mean to you in court. I hate sometimes when the staff is mean to you, and you know they're mean to you because the judge is probably mean to them. It's just the discourtesy that happens in what we do is, to me, shocking. It's totally shocking. Maybe it's because I did it at age 36 instead of age 26. I don't know. But boy, there's no reason why you need to be a smart aleck, you know. And all that does is invite it back, and people can't wait till it's your turn. And you'll have one. I guarantee you're going to have one, you know. Like today, my alarm didn't go off. Something's going to happen if you do this long enough, and you're going to hope somebody over there is going to be understanding, you know. So that's my preaching part. But anyway, it's Rule 570 of Rules of Criminal Procedure. For all of you out there, you can create that opportunity you're talking about to do that work. Now, like I said, if you don't do that, and by the way, I did file one of these in a county, I won't say which county, and it came back with a big line across the order saying denied. And I think that probably would be an appealable issue, but we didn't have to go there. But the reason why they could probably justify that they denied it is, let's say that we have pretrial conferences, that's what call to trial is for, or something like that. But I can tell you right now, judges aren't happy with prosecutors who are causing people to go to trial all the time either. Judges are the first persons who want to know early if there's something in this case that we should be looking at. And found out. That's what diversionary courts are all about, by the way. When we get into substance abuse, that's a whole new topic, diversionary courts. You become your own diversionary court. You become your own diversionary procedure here. I can tell you, I know that I've heard from a couple, well, I'm going to retract that. I suspect strongly that a couple of the judges that I filed this 570 motion, and they knew we walked out of there, and I had the client prepared now for all the things. When they walk into court, I think you should have a writing saying what your maximum sentence would be, what your minimum would be, and what you're risking. I think they should know that when they show up, because guess what? When you're going to do your Loeffler analysis and you're trading off the things you want versus the things they want, I think you need to be able to talk to your client and say, guess what? If they convict you, I had a guy just recently that I showed him that he would do 40 years in jail with the maximum, and certainly 7 in any type of application of the rules. And he had 3 different counts against him. The conviction of any one of them would get us to that point. And they had 3 shots at him, and they were offering him something like 15 months with credit for time served that he didn't get credit for. They would be able to say he wouldn't get credit, and he would not have got credit for 12. So I basically got him 3 months compared to what he could get. And I went home at night, and I put my head on the pillow, and I knew that I did a good job, you know. Now, every once in a while, somebody's going to say, I'm going to roll the dice. Fine. Bring your checkbook and your charge card. We'll talk about that the next time. You want to roll the dice, I'm suggesting you don't do it, but I only get paid from the people who are paying me. So if you don't pay me, number one, you're not paying me, but number two, you're keeping me from working for somebody else who'd be stupid enough to pay me, okay? It's compensation. So anyway, so 570, and we are now at 11 o'clock already, right? You okay? Did anybody figure out that time that we should be done? No. No. Nice try. It's like when I taught school, I'd have a substitute teacher every once in a while. I'd come back and find stuff everywhere, you know. I'm not the substitute teacher here that you say we should be done at 11, you know. Okay, so now I actually have to do this, right? You're going to make me do this? Okay. 10 minutes per hour. Who's going to help me? Because I'm bad in math.
4 hours, so 40 minutes, so 11:20.
11:20? I thought it'd be 11:40.
11:30.
You said 10 minutes per hour.
10 minutes per hour,
We're
yeah.
here for 4 hours,
So 11:20.
40 minutes of break.
Okay.
11:20.
Now, are we all okay with that?
Oh, yeah.
All right. The mind, by the way, can only endure a fraction of what the backside can. Okay? So. And we're cramped in here? For crying out loud, this is crazy. I just found out something, again, turn signal, right? I'm going off the ramp here. I just found something out in Butler County in a case that shocked me at age 69 that had never been a problem. I got to tell you the story. I walk in and I got to see my client. Sir, you're here to see a client? Yeah, I had a suit on, right? So, badge, and they wand you and they take you through and they walk you down this usually big doors. Some of you guys have never done this, or gals, okay? Next door. They won't let you through a door until the one behind you slides shut. Big iron thing, right? Am I wrong? Been in jail? Yep. Okay. You can hear them clanging clear up 5 floors away. It's just a big hollow metal building usually. Spotless, shiny floor. Get in the elevator with the policeman and he's standing there and they're not usually all that glib. They hate their jobs, I think, the guards in jails. Anyway, so we go up and he opens the door and the back door of the elevator opens. Almost fell because I was leaning on it. I didn't realize. So anyway, so you go out to this hallway and you look down the hallway. Nothing but shiny waxed floor. This way, nothing. And you walk down the hall with him and you come to a door and he goes and he opens this door and you go in. Buzz when you're done. It connects behind me. I swear, this room wasn't any bigger than from me to your table. And there's a gigantic piece of plate glass and a round hole in it. And there's a guy sitting in an orange suit already waiting for me. And I sit down, only enough room to sit. And that thing, and we're talking. And this client gave me kind of the creeps. Wasn't Hannibal Lecter, but it was, anyway. But it was weird. The chemistry wasn't there, but we eventually got along. And so I said, okay, I'll see you at call to trial. Yeah, see what you can do. And he got up and he was upset because I didn't tell him he was getting out now, you know. So he walks through and I see his door shut. And I go like this, I push this little button that they told me to push and nothing. And I pushed that little button again and nothing. 25 minutes. I started thinking I couldn't breathe. I got it in my head that I was having trouble, that this place, I couldn't breathe. I actually started to have a panic attack. There's no way anybody knows I'm in here. There's no way anyone's listening to me. I literally, first time in my life, I have not been able to go back to a jail since then. They make me meet my clients with a video thing. I became claustrophobic. Never even knew I was claustrophobic. In an airplane, thing almost happened. When I was going to Philadelphia to teach that class, I sat down, I got the last plane, because you know me, I wait till the last minute to reserve a ticket. $800 to fly to Philadelphia from Pittsburgh. That's how crazy. So I sat down and the airplane started bending in the back, right? And as it bent in, it's coming to a point. So I'm in the window seat, and I got this lady next to me and a lady next to her, and on the other side of this aisle are 3 more seats, and all I see is heads in front of me in 2 sections. I started thinking I couldn't breathe again because I couldn't get out of here. I said, ma'am, you have to let me out. I need to stretch my legs at you. I'm not changing seats with anybody. And I said, I crawled like right over. I stepped right on her lap and I went over her and over the other lady. I mean, I was, you know, so I don't know what. All I know is I have claustrophobia now. So my doctor, who's one of my doctors in here, I'm not a doctor for it, but he said that you probably had some kind of panic attack and that in your mind is still connected to that and it'll take a while for you to forget about that. But being somewhere where you're starting to think you can't breathe and where you start thinking you have no control. That was the key. I had no control over getting out of that room. There was nothing I could have done short of smashing my head to a pulp to get out of that room. There's no way I could get out of that room. And it occurred to me, you know, there's a movie out there where there's a doctor and he treats somebody for cancer and he got cancer himself. That's an old movie. Was it Harrison Ford? Anyway, maybe we should all think about what it must be like to be locked up, you know. Anyway, so I don't know what any of that means, except that I have claustrophobia and I was in jail. So, okay, 570. In your books right now, right after 570 is page 41, and that takes us into something else that's important. Remember I told you about collaboration being easy said and hard to do? Well, for example, now, I could be standing in front of a judge, and my doctor will send me, by the way, doctors are notorious, they hate paperwork. So we created a form for them to fill out with the individually prescribed treatment recommendations, okay? So remember we talked about a person being assessed? It's one thing to put somebody through a treatment like this, but you shouldn't put anybody through a treatment or a defense strategy or anything professional without an assessment, okay? So the assessment is the fact finding, okay? And the assessment comes from, and next class I'll tell you about not having a Benny Hill conference with your client, but the assessment comes from a battery of questions and information, and now the doctor actually plugs in all these treatment concepts, and I can, with my phone, send it to the court reporter's printer in the hallway and print the actual individual prescription plus a 128-page behavioral modification contract that has everything imaginable in there, which can be engrafted onto the sentencing order, and the judge, all he has to do is sign it. They love when you give them it done. Listen, whether you're civil, criminal, or whatever, always walk into court with a proposed order. In Allegheny County, by the way, they make you write everything down. I always go now with an order, 3 orders. I'll have what I like, what I think the judge is going to want to like. Then I have a hearing order, and then I have just one with a bunch of blank lines, double spaced, so if you write in them, it would be legible. So it's always important to, if you want to get what you want, to have a proposed order. Now, when the other attorney says, we're going to go to motion court, for example, in civil law, you always want to say, yeah, I'll do the proposed order. Because that proposed order is really, there's a lot of things you can do in there that are very important. I was just in Mercer County the other day about a divorce that doesn't seem to ever want to end because the lady doesn't want to do it. So I filed contempt because the lady didn't do something. We showed up and she said, I already did it. I did it last week. I said, Your Honor, there's 7 more things we need to do. I don't want to come back here every time. So the judge says, okay, do you have this worked out? And the other guy says, yeah, listen, my client will do whatever she's supposed to do. I said, fine, Your Honor. And we don't have time. The judge doesn't want that to take time. So we put on the record that my client will do bump, 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 bump. And then at the end, the judge said, is there anything else, Mr. Papa? This order will be sent to me for review and signing in 30 days. Now, how does that play out, right? I send it to the other attorney, say, I didn't say that, or I meant this, or I meant that. And here we go for 2 months more work, right? So I said, Your Honor, what I want the other attorney to agree to is I want him to agree that this is the agreement. The document that will follow is a memorial of that agreement, but this is the agreement. This case is over today. And the judge can reword it if he wants to. So those are the kind of things, in 35 years that come to you. So again, going back to Rule 570 and getting the treatment strategy, if the judge is going to cut your client a break, he's going to want to know that if he crosses the line, he's going to get unloaded on. And it almost always requires, by the way, a long probation tail. You never know when you got a real criminal in front of you or a real defendant. A real criminal will basically always want to resist the probation tail. And that's when you might want to say, danger, warning, warning, danger. You're a private sector person. This is a client you don't want. There's an old expression, no business is better than bad business. People ask me, how's it going? How do you like being a lawyer? You used to be a teacher. How do you like being a lawyer? Depends on the people and what mood they're in. They're almost never in a good mood when it comes time to pay. We'll go over that next time. So, again, in the book here, we have the 570 conference. We have the written documentation, something that can be signed by the judge, and the prosecutor is going to love you too because they don't have to do any work. Very important, though, that nobody's going to look at a multiple-page document and sign it if they don't know who you are. And again, it goes back to not being a smart aleck, and it goes back to having a reputation. When we talk about the next class, a person like that doesn't become my client until I have him and his entire family in front of me telling him that he made a mistake and he's going to quit doing this or he needs to go somewhere else. And I'm going to get you probably probation, but you need to understand that if you violate this probation, I have enough in here that they're going to take you off the street and put you in jail immediately. It says it right in my representation contract, that your health is more important than your freedom interest. There's plenty of guys down the street that will find ways to get you out of it. I'm not one of those guys. You don't have to work for me. But I put that in. You should have the family in there so that they sign off on that you witness. I actually have a little video that they watch so they can't claim that I didn't tell them. You know, Dante did that for me. What do we always say? What's the difference between a play and a movie, right? In a play, you have to be on each performance. In a movie, you only have to do it once. So we have this little orientation video that we show the clients. They sign off on that. And again, if you're having a client agree that I'm allowed to call adult probation and tell on him if I think if he's over the line, I have that in my representation contract because, listen, in jail is significantly better than dead, okay? And dead could be dead in several ways. It could be dead from the overdose. It could be dead by crossing the center line and getting killed, or crossing the center line in vehicular homicide. So, anyway, we're approaching the magic hour. Okay, I'm trying to put the pedal on the metal because usually we do a lot more. I wanted you to spend some final time with diversionary courts. Diversionary courts, you might be wanting to make the speech I just made to you. Diversionary courts are basically courts, they call them boutique courts, the major research. They have diversionary courts for drugs. They have diversionary courts for mortgages now. All of your counties have these special mortgage rules now. They have local mortgage rules where you have to come in for a conference. Anyway, they have diversionary courts for homeless, for veterans, for prostitutes in big cities, for homeless. I think I said that twice. So, but whatever it is, it's recognition that we can't try all these cases. So what they do is somebody like me has created a cookie cutter approach, and so they take them in and they go into diversionary courts. Well, the one I'm concerned about is the drug diversionary court. There's a whole organization called Drug Courts of America, and they have national conferences and all that. Now, I have to tell you, I would rather be in a courtroom where they have no diversionary court than one that has one. Because one that has one, you have two problems there. And I'm not going to say the county, but it comes immediately to mind. They have a diversionary court, but they pay lip service to treatment. They basically say, yeah, we believe treatment is better than incarceration. Well, it's certainly better for the government. If you're one of these guys counting coins, $75 a day to incarcerate somebody, right? So they're incarcerated, they can't work. They can't work, they lose their job. There's no withholding tax. Their family is now starving, so they go into foster care. And there's a whole cascade of huge economic devastation for the government for one incarcerated person. So if we know that incarcerated person is not going to be cured, and that incarcerated person is going to learn to contact more drug people, and he's going to come out and repeat over and over and over again, it seems amazingly stupid to continue to do that. But I recognize that we can't just let him out either, by the way. I think that legalization is a step in the wrong direction because legalization to me is a surrender. We can't do anything, so let's just let them all go kill each other and have a crazy society. Okay, so diversionary courts, if you have a diversionary court that has this, they usually have a chart, and it has all the things you have to do to meet the requirements of diversionary court. What's the diversionary court that we all know about years ago? ARD, right? ARD is a diversionary court. ARD means if you meet these things, then you can go there, and then you won't go to jail, and you'll get a little slap on the wrist, and you can expunge the record. Everybody know what an ARD is for DUI? Okay, good. I don't want to go into that. I don't have time to. So, but that's a diversionary court. My most important point is the district attorney is the gatekeeper in ARD. People have tried to test that in the appellate courts, and it keeps on being sustained that if the district attorney doesn't want you in the ARD program, he can make his own requirements, right? So the problem with some diversionary courts is they say that they believe in treatment, and they create this thing, and guess what? The only people who can get in diversionary drug court are people who don't really have a problem. They've only done it once. So now what they've done in their infinite wisdom is they've doubled the cost of the system. They still have a system that is being staggered by a huge caseload, and they have a system over here that they created to relieve the caseload that they don't let anybody in with all these full-time paid employees, and it's doubled the cost of everything and not begun to address the problem at all. So what I do is I always go to court and I make my argument, maybe even in my 570 conference, I want it in open court and I want a record made to show that their diversionary court is arbitrary and capricious, that selection is arbitrary, and it may be that the DA has that right, but I don't think a judge has that right to make their program, and I have doctors who will back me up who will testify to show that they are not, the whole purpose of their drug court is to help people, and they are violating their Eighth Amendment rights. So again, if you have expert opinion, these doctors will all testify, then you can make a dent in that diversionary court. But it's a hell of a lot easier, a heck of a lot easier, if they don't have a diversionary court where you basically say, Your Honor, I am the diversionary court for this defendant. The judge is going to listen to you, and if you have an argument that's cogent and passionately delivered, we'll talk about that next time too, then the judge is probably going to listen to you. Now, I had one case where the judge kept on shaking his head no while I was talking. He was shaking his head no. So I kept on talking, and I asked that the record be transcribed, and then he talked to the DA, and the DA gave me a different plea bargain. He didn't say yes to me, but he gave me a different plea bargain. So the squeaky wheel does get grease, but the squeak has to have some substance to it.